Hello, I'm Grey Waste Tim, and you are in the Den of the Grey Waste. Today, we're going to be talking Revelation and Monster Mamas and all that good stuff. Monsters in A Song of Ice and Fire and the ladies who love them. So, I have a guest that I'll be bringing in just momentarily. Just want to get set up for what we're about to do. We are going to be talking Whitewalkers, dragons, shadow babies, all that type of stuff. Melisandre, Dany, Night's Queen, Visenya, and little baby Maegor. So it should be a good stream. Thank you to everyone who shows up. If you're migrating over from the David Lightbringer YouTube channel, he is currently in Los Angeles for the Game of Thrones Con. He will be streaming later tonight, giving us all the information that I guess that he's allowed to share. So thank you to Dave for allowing me to fill the time slot and trusting me to give people something to chew on while you're enjoying the con. So just want to start monster babies. I had a rendition that I wanted to do, and I'm not a good singer, but I want to put it out there. So, mother, who should I annihilate? Mother, should I war against the faith? Mother, should I breach Storm's End? I'll cause a great fall. Mother, should I break the wall? Thank you. I'm going to bring in my guest now. You know her, you love her. It is Girl Nettles. Hello.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Tim. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you.
I haven't done this.
Yeah. We're small time, and this is like this is our getting our big moment. And again, like I said, thank you to Dave for letting me do this, letting me have the time slot. So this is a topic that I've wanted to cover. When I did my very first stream, which was with Dave, It was the Crypts of Winterfell stream, and when we got to discussion about Night's Queen, I brought up Revelation and the Mother of Abominations, and I thought of, because I was thinking of Night's Queen as like this progenitor of Whitewalkers. Have you ever seen the show Supernatural?
Some of it, up until season 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's later in one of the later seasons. There's a character called Eve, and she is like the mother of monsters. She is the original, the one who creates through her. It's through her that we get vampires and werewolves and wraiths and all the things that those Winchester boys are out hunting. And yeah, and that was one of the things like I thought when I got into A Song of Ice and Fire and heard the story of Night's Queen, I was like, oh, this is kind of, as I started like hearing theories about there and then kind of reading in more into the story and then formulating my own tinfoil, I started thinking like, oh, this is like an Eve in Supernatural type deal. Like maybe she's like the mother of monsters, the mother of White Walkers.
Lilith?
Yeah, like Lilith. Exactly. And that's why I was so confused why they went with, and Supernatural, why they went with Eve and not Lilith for that one. But exactly, it is the mother.
Well, because for some people, I've heard something where it's like Lilith is actually the good one and Eve is actually bad, and like it got mixed up. I've heard all sorts of stuff, so I could see how Supernatural would go with that. That Eve is actually the abomination.
Yeah, and I mean the story of Lilith is that she did not submit to Adam because she would not lay down or however. And then I mean some people look at it as like a sexual position, like she wanted to be on top, and it's like no, it's more of a metaphorical thing. Is that she would not submit to Adam as a superior. It was the idea that men and women should be equal, and it's through Eve as the more submissive partner that we sort of get this whole patriarchal thing that most society ended up going towards after that. Exactly. Yeah. And we are talking Revelation, which is the apocalypse. There is the character, which is the Mother of Abominations, aka the Whore of Babylon and the Scarlet Woman. I prefer to stick to the Mother of Abominations title.
Okay.
The Whore of Babylon will be said because it is what is used in our reference material, but we're not here to slut shame. And
Oh man.
No. We're not here to kink shame. We might maybe we'll occasionally kink ask why, but that's about it. I do want to provide everyone with a forewarning. This is not a House of the Dragon stream, so potentially there may be some spoilers for House of the Dragon. I know I will be talking about the Shepherd later when we talk about dragons. And also, this is fair warning, your trigger warning for right now for those who need it. I mean, you're here on a Song of Ice and Fire stream, so you should know the topics that come up, but obviously incest, rape, sexual abuse is going to be something that comes up, especially when we get to Gilly and Craster's sons, things and child sacrifice, all that kinds of stuff. I mean, we're gonna have fun when it's time to have fun, but when we get to that topic, we're gonna approach it as best we can. But just for those who are here, like if you need that, this is your trigger warning now before we start. So Nettles, now you and I have discussed with Dave, like we all three of us kind of had like a fucked up religious upbringing, and I just want to hear a little bit more about yours and how what exactly you know about, like, when it comes to Revelation, your thoughts on it.
Well, Revelation, since it's like the apocalypse, it is like more of like the scarier stuff. So it's not, I don't know it as well as like I know a book like Genesis or like Matthew or something like that. But I did, of course, like grew up in the church. I still go to church. So I do know that Revelation is something that should and is studied like a Song of Ice and Fire, just because it's very like dense and specific. And it's hard to know what part is symbolism and what part is like, this is what's going to happen. Like it'll get super, and by super specific, I mean like there'll be like 4 horsemen on white horses or like a certain color and 3 trumpets and 7 seraphim, and kind of like how specific they got with like building the ark. But so like I need help with like the specific things, which I'm sure you're gonna
I'm gonna read all of the verses, and we're gonna break it down. I just want to get
the sweeping overviews and tones of Revelation. Like, I'm definitely there.
Okay, and I just want to get a bit more on like your religious background.
Protestant, Christian, Baptist.
You are Baptist. Okay, I am supposed to be Catholic, but I've told this story, but it warrants telling again. I was born out of wedlock. I am a bastard. One of the reasons why Jon Snow is probably my favorite as far as heroic characters is.
I gotta go. Sorry. Just kidding.
I relate a lot to Jon Snow. And when I was born, I'm from Pennsylvania. I was born in a small Pennsylvania town. Our local Catholic church refused to baptize me.
Oh my gosh.
But my grandmother, who is a very German Catholic, demanded that I have some sort of religious upbringing. So I was baptized Lutheran, but raised in a Catholic household. And I attended a multi-Christian denominational Sunday school. So we had Lutherans, Catholics, Episcopalians, and Baptists, like all under the same roof.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really weird.
Yeah. A lot of rules in Catholicism. Yeah.
Yep. And I attended that until I was 11. And at the same time, I was attending public school because we didn't have money for private school. And I remember it was in 6th grade. So I was 11 years old, and we took a field trip to the Museum of Natural History. And there was a paleontologist on staff, and we saw the dinosaur bones, and he had stuff that we could like, there was the ones that you could just look at behind the velvet rope, no touch. And then there's the ones that you can touch. And we had this paleontologist, and he explained things like carbon dating and stuff like that. And he did it in terms that kids could understand.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. I can sort of wrap my head around this. And then I went to my Sunday school, and they were trying to teach me creation myth. And I remember raising my hand and being like, well, what about the dinosaurs? And that was they shunned me for that. Like, they tried to say that man and dinosaur walked together, that the earth was only 6,000 years old. And I was just like, no. And then coming off of that, and then coming off of knowing the dirty laundry surrounding my birth about the Catholic Church refusing to baptize me, but still being raised into it, I was like, wow, I got hit really, really hard as a young kid with the hypocrisy of it all. And but I was still interested in it because I still read the Bible. And even though the people that were teaching me out the Bible were giving me the wrong ideas of it, I still found that I was able to take something from it.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a Christian, I still do believe in like a higher power. I just don't believe in what organized religion tells me about it.
Execution of it, yeah.
Like I think like if there is a God, if there is a creator of the universe, whatever that is, it has more important things on its mind than who's sleeping with who. Like that's just my take on it, right?
Yeah. I just hate anytime like a child or like the mother is punished for not having an abortion. That's basically what it is. It's like society sometimes punishes like the single mom or like having a baby out of wedlock, but then you also say you don't want abortion. So which one is it going to be? Mm-hmm. When the mother does take that hard decision and say, hey, I know my life is going to be tough, I know it's going to be expensive or whatever the shame, and they have the child, now they're shamed into it. A baby can't be baptized. No, that's something I don't agree with. But yeah, I don't know. I was just one of those lucky kids that like got all like the good parts of church. Like I don't have any horror stories. But yeah.
Yeah.
But I do kind of just definitely speak out against like the horrible stuff that has gone on in the church. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now, for those unfamiliar, like George R. Martin also had a Catholic upbringing, and that has influenced his writing. We see a lot of the influence, especially when it comes to things like the Faith of the Seven.
Yeah.
The anointment of the holy oils on new kings is very much something taken straight from Holy Roman Emperor, when the Pope would anoint the emperor, things like that. And he sort of brings in this idea of, well, who's really in charge when it comes to that type of hierarchy? Is it the king? Is it the faith? Like the High Septon is very much our Pope figure in the story. But we also have competing religions when we bring in Relorism and the old gods that are still worshipped in the north. And as for Relorism is very much like a Zoroastrian religion, because there are two main gods that are always opposed, a god of dark and a god of light. We have Relor and the great other. But Relorism also has aspects of Christianity applied to it, and it's mostly the bad part of it. It's very much the our God is the one true God, and if you don't believe in our God, we're going to burn you. Part of Christianity that we very much see in Relorism.
But there is more freedom. Like the difference between like Christianity and Zoroastrianism is like Christianity has like more rules. Like, you know, like in Relorism, you can sleep, Melisandre can sleep with Stannis. And, you know, Ceasae can be like, that's fine. Because in their rules are all about follow Relor, not so much about have sex when we say so, or have sex on this, you know, with this specific person. Or at least they haven't really told us what the rules are of Relorism. Maybe you have to wear red on Wednesdays, or like certain things like that. But so far it seems like, yeah, sure, there's zealots, but they're not as buttoned up about things like the faith is.
Yeah. And Relorism's, because they hire there are temple prostitutes, and that is possibly one of Melisandre's origins when she was sold when she's having her memory when she was Melanie, whole Melanie Lot 7, that when she was sold as a slave and sold to the temporal lore, it's very possible that her beginnings in Relorism were as one of these temple prostitutes before climbing the ranks and attaining this rank of Red Priestess.
Being called, as she would say it, when Relor calling her.
But Melisandre is also a heretic when it comes to it, because she is the one that's championing Stannis as the Lord of Light, whereas other ones like Makoro and Benero and these other red priests that we see out further east are starting more to come to champion Dany. And one thing, like, I've always kind of been is why exactly Mel thinks that Stannis, of all people, is the prince that was promised, aside from him being the Prince of Dragonstone. It's like, but before that, because Stannis is not of Dragonstone, he's of Storm's End. And as a Baratheon, he has sort of a far legacy ancestry to the two Valyrians, because going back to Orys Baratheon as our potential bastard brother of Aegon the Conqueror, it is possible that the Baratheons were a Valyrian family. But Stannis himself, like, aside from being the Prince of Dragonstone, there doesn't really seem to be much connecting him to the Azor Ahai prophecy. And it's really been like a real jump in logic, to me at least, as to why exactly Melisandre is thinking he, of all people, is this prince that was promised figured.
Do we hear Melisandre mention Daenerys at all? Ever?
No, because she is unaware of Daenerys.
Right? It makes me think of, I was rewatching this movie called Eve's Bayou, and it's like New Orleans, like voodoo kind of magic. And so, like, the seers, like the woman, she's truly gifted. Like, she can see the future. She can see when harm will happen to her, but not to her, to people. But there's a block on herself. She can't see like her future. But there's also a block on her bloodline. So her niece, she tries to like read her niece, and she realizes there's a block on that too. So it makes me feel like, okay, at this point, the entire planet is talking about Daenerys. Melisandre, your job is to literally be a seer, literally be looking out for people who are using fire magic, and dragons are fire made flesh, and you can't see it. It makes me think that like George isn't dumb and that this is willful. Like, it just reminds me like of that block. Like, it strikes me of Melisandre having a block against Daenerys. And so that's why Daenerys isn't an option.
Yeah.
And I also think it's like specifically like it doesn't matter what the orders are. She's actually seeing visions of Stannis in the fire, and that's what she's following, not orders from the temple.
But she's also seeing visions of Jon Snow. And that's where we get this blurred line when it comes to the whole prince that was promised. Now, we know from Daenerys' side of things, like, that there is no masculine or feminine verbiage to the word, that it could mean prince or princess. So,
wait, I'm sorry, I have to laugh. Christina Kildale just said, I heard someone tell their kid. Now, remember, all of this is fake in the Museum of Natural History. And I just went to the Museum of Natural History over Thanksgiving, and it was full of kids. And I could imagine someone's parents like, listen, don't be asking these questions. Remember, all of this is fake. Sorry, I had to.
Oh my god, that's yeah.
That's for you.
It had the opposite effect on me. I believe the science. The science made more sense to me. But okay, so getting back. So I feel like Melisandre is a good character to start with for this Mother of Abomination thing, because she does encompass everything about the Mother of Abominations, as well as, again, the Whore of Babylon and the Scarlet Woman. Like, all three of these different titles that are applied to this biblical character, they all fit for Melisandre, because she is the Mother of Abominations with the birth of the Shadow Babies. As the Whore of Babylon, well, again, this is a woman who is using her sexuality as a means to an end, because her birthing of the Shadow Babies involves what most cultists would call erotic alchemy, which is sex magic, blood, sex, and magic. And I'm talking like magic.
You know why? Because that's the magic of creation. It's the most powerful magic there is.
Mm-hmm. And when I say magic in this sense, I'm talking magic with a K. And this refers to the ritualization of one's spiritual intentions. And we see this with when Mel births the two shadow babies. These the shadow babies are created with a clear and cut purpose. Kill Renly, and then the second one, infiltrate Storm's End, kill Courtney Penrose. They do their job, and then they sort of they disappear, and we don't see or hear from them again. So it's like they're created with a clear intention, a clear goal in mind, and so
that's a golem.
Sort of like a shadow golem, and when we like magic with a K, Magick. This is the usage comes from Aleister Crowley, and this is to differentiate magic from stage magic, from just parlor acts. And today we use the alternate spelling. The spelling with a K is to separate spiritual practice from fiction, like fantasy novels and films. And this comes in Crowley's Order Templi Orientis, which means also can mean the Order of the Temple of the East. And when I was looking into this, that hit me as being like, okay, because Order of the Temple of the East, and then we think of R'hllorism, the temples of R'hllor, like when we think out in Volantis, and then the origins of R'hllorism come from even further east, because this is a religion that's coming out of Asshai in the Shadowlands originally. And it makes sense that a religion that originated in the Shadowlands probably is, especially in Asshai of all places, probably doesn't always have the best of intentions and is going to be...
Sorry, I have to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly, like in 1 minute, where do you think Asshai gets its source of power from? Like, why do you think Asshai is Asshai?
I'm a fan of Dave's moon meteor theory. I believe so for me, I think that Asshai was originally if not the capital of the great empire of the Dawn, at least a very... I'm sorry?
The gemstone people?
Yeah, the gemstone emperors. Like the Pearl Emperor, the Topaz Emperor, all the stuff that predates
all those specific colors, yeah, in a certain order.
All the ones that, and these I believe are the spirits that Dany sees in the House of the Undying. This people that's even more ancient than the Valyrians. Like if we go to the dragon, like the origin of dragon theory, of whether they come from the 14 Flames or whether they originate in the shadow and were brought over to Valyria, and the Valyrians were actually taught how to ride dragons from another people. I very much like... I'm more on the idea of that origin theory. I think that dragons originated in the shadow, that Valyrians are not the only dragon riders, that there was an even older group that came from a land further east. And I think it is Great Empire of the Dawn. And this is why I really want to do my Romance of the Three Emperors thing, because a lot of this is going to crop up in that, and I just got to read Romance of the Three Kingdoms so I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Do you think there was like a revelation or an apocalyptic type event that caused Asshai to become... Don't they say that it drinks light? It sounds it sounds like nuclear waste to me.
Yeah.
Like when you tell me that something drinks light,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and kids can't be there, it makes me think of nuclear activity. Like, you know, your genes need to be set for you to go there, because if you're still a sponge or growing like a kid, that shit's gonna impact you. But if you're an adult, you've already gone through puberty, then sure, you can go there. But I don't know. I just wanted to ask that question, because if we're talking about Melisandre, we need to know what type of power this mother has, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Asshai does work as a great parallel to Babylon as this ancient mystical city where
I think of it like Atlantis.
Yeah. It works. It works on so many levels. Like they're never perfect. I've said numerous times on these streams, like it's never perfect one-to-one scenarios, but you get the major beats of what George is getting at. So Atlantis works both for Asshai, but so does Babylon in this sense. And like there is no in Westerosi culture, like we don't have, as far as in the Faith of the Seven goes, like there is no Whore of Babylon figure. But with Melisandre as a red priestess, as someone who uses her sexuality and her allure as part of her act, and also as part of her religion and part of her magic ritual, like you could see someone like Maester Crescent or Davos or some septon of the faith pointing at Melisandre and being like, yeah, that's her. That's the whore, right? She's right there.
Well, Crescent kind of does it. Mm-hmm. He dies for it.
Mm-hmm.
He dies for it. But the thing about it, you have to understand, it's like all these women who are using sex, it's also because it works. Like Robert Baratheon uses his warhammer because it works. He raises it and people bow. Women in this world, we can't raise a warhammer, but if we can get a guy to sleep with us, he is ours for that hour, I promise. I'm sure, like, as a guy, you know, like for that hour, like that is our warhammer. So I don't think we should look at it as like odd or like, you know, anything that's what she uses, like that. It should kind of be expected. And I think just like Robert Baratheon, men who fight well rise to the top. Well, women who have worked for years and years and have harnessed their feminine mystique, well, they rise to the top too in their own way. Oh, sorry, you don't like that? It's the truth. It's the truth. Women, even in today's time, the women who are able to maintain their beauty but still keep their intelligence, well, they get to be supermodels or marry the millionaire, and they have a cushier life. And back then, women like Melisandre, they weren't getting millionaires, but they were surviving. Because knowing how to like block it out of your mind, like even if you don't feel like you're not feeling this guy, you don't feel like doing it, but if you know how to put those mental blocks and get through it, well, you survive another day. So I think that's just what I think about that.
And when like Melisandre also, when she's talking with Jon Snow, she does sort of proposition him like for a moment, like when Stannis, she says that Stannis's fires are burning low, like for Stannis to try and create another shadow baby, it might kill him. He's expelled too much, but there's something about Jon that Melisandre sees in him, and it sort of gives the impression that she thinks that this is a guy who'd probably make a really, really powerful shadow baby. And that's probably has more to do with Jon's parentage and how he is. Yeah.
And that speaks as a testament to Jon too, because like I was just saying, it's expected for a woman to use sex as her weapon, but it's also like, what kind of guy says no? Like Jon is like a 1 in a million guy to say like no to Melisandre. So I think also as we study like Mother of Madness or Mother of Monsters, they're kind of like a succubus. Like sometimes they have like a siren-like quality where men just can't help themselves. But the man that is able to help themselves, it's almost like it automatically places them. I don't know. I don't want to say like as like a nemesis or type of thing, but it does propel them to say that like, okay, now they're on equal playing fields. Like you don't have power over him. Because if you can't use sex, what are you going to use, Melisandre? You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
When you meet the guy that says no, that like this guy is a real worthy champion, because now you're going to have to change your dynamic, your strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's sort of the fault in Stannis is, and one of the things that pokes a big hole in this Stannis as the Azor Ahai figure is that he is this like he falls for her.
He can't say no. He doesn't say no.
No, like he'll say no to his own wife, but he won't say no to her. And it's a contrast because Stannis is presented as this very rigid man, this very like no nonsense, follow the law to the letter type deal. But he falters and he does. And I mean,
do you think this is his only sin in his whole life?
Oh no, I'm sure.
I think it is. I feel like this is like the only time Stannis has ever messed up, just because of how like what did Maester Crescent say? He'll bend before he break, or he'll break
before he bends. Yeah.
That's a person who like he was Randall from Recess. He's like just like always following the rules and tattling like, hey, teacher, Tim is passing notes. Like that's Stannis. I don't know.
But the thing is like when we look at Stannis and his character growth, he actually does bend quite a lot. He is willing to make concessions and compromise. Now, early on, yeah, I say Crescent was right when we first meet him. But as time goes on, especially after
Melisandre, like everything you're going to talk about is with Melisandre's influence, right?
Yeah, but also it's not just Melisandre's, but there's also Davos's influence on him because Stannis's real character change comes after his loss at the Battle of the Blackwater, when he goes to the Wall, when he has counsel with Jon, and Jon tells him like, no, you should go try and recruit the Northern Mountain clans. And Stannis has that realization of, I put the cart before the horse. I was trying to win the kingdom. I was trying to win the kingdom to save the world. I should have been saving the world to win the kingdom type deal. And he has that kind of turnaround. And that's when we start seeing more bending from Stannis, because he is willing to work with people. He's still stern and he's still got his Stannis way of doing things, but he is willing to listen to people. Like he is willing to work within confines. Like he isn't just like, so no, I don't think he will break before he bends. I think it takes a lot to get him to move in another direction, but he will, if you can present him with enough evidence, he will take your word. And that's why he takes Jon's advice, and it's also why Davos is raised to the elevation that he's raised, because Stannis doesn't care so much about birthright. He looks for merit. Like he's not going to give you're not going to get your spot just because of who your daddy is. You need to show that like you're worth being in this position.
Yeah. And speaking of Stannis, it's like, when you think we're talking about mothers, but you have to think about who the baby daddy. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Melisandre, like, as women, we do kind of choose, if we're given the privilege, who the fathers of our children are. And so, you have to think about this monster that Melisandre births. Some of that essence is Stannis.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what percentage is Stannis and what percentage is magic, and if any of Melisandre's DNA, but Brienne says it had the face of Stannis. So I think it had Stannis's hate for Renly.
Yeah. Well,
in there.
Going back to like that definition I gave for magic with a K, like it seems like the shadow babies are sort of a manifestation of Stannis's will. They go in, they do what Stannis wanted done, kill Renly, kill Courtney Penrose, and then they're done. Then they disappear. It's like, job is done. We're out.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of like Jon, when we do look at the actual verse from Revelation, and I'm going to read it now, and I'm reading from the New International Version of the Holy Bible, because there are different translations. When we think of our Jon character, well, in Revelation, the character who tells us of the mother of abominations and all the things he is seeing, it is a character named Jon. Now, certain historians have placed this as being John the Apostle. That's more of a 2nd century thing, but more contemporary historians say like, nah, there's really not much that we can say about who exactly our POV in this is, just that they are a Christian prophet. But it hits me, and that that no matter what, his name is Jon, and Jon is seeing the mother of abominations. But then in A Song of Ice and Fire, our Jon Snow, when it comes to these mother of abominations, a lot of the characters that we're going to be discussing are either women that he has met or will meet in the future. He has met Melisandre. He has met Gilly. He knows Catelyn Stark, obviously. But he will eventually meet Dany. Now, Night's Queen, that's up in the air. We don't know what direction George is taking that in. We still need Winds of Winter, which is supposed to give us more White Walker chapters, hoping. And of course, not Visenya, because Visenya is dead. But but her descendants still count through, which is where we'll get Dany. So
it's funny that you put Jon and like centralized to these women, because isn't Jon's name supposed to be evil? Like it says that.
That was another thing. This is one I'm holding up because I'm going to be with Gray Area now that Obsidian Knights podcast is back. I'm scheduled for Jon 6 and A Clash of Kings, which is the Bael the Bard chapter. And Ygritte says that Jon Snow is an evil name, and I've always wondered about that. Like, why does she say that? Why is Jon Snow an evil name? And my headcanon is that Jon Snow might be the name of the original Night's King.
Okay.
I think of both that, Ygritte saying that to Jon Snow, and then old Nan's story to Bran about Night's King. About some say he was this, but some say he might have been a Stark, mayhaps a Stark named Brandon. And I've come to the conclusion, like, if they're with the Night's King, I think there are two possibilities. Either he was a trueborn Stark named Brandon, or he was a Stark bastard named Jon Snow. That's my thoughts on Night's King.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Jon's name might be evil. I'm not sure yet. I haven't really thought about it, but I'm in a book club on Discord, and we're talking about it. And we were talking about Snowgate and how, like, we think that, bastards in the North, last name Snow.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, the Lord's right to the first night would breed a lot of bastards. Well, all those bastards, their last names would have been Snow, and everybody would have been looking to get rid of them because it reminds you of men being cuckolded, right? Mm-hmm. So you would put the bastards named Snow through the Snowgate, right? The same way we see that the Black Gate is a mouth. It's a weird, almost like a weirwood mouth. We could imagine, like, maybe there was a mouth at some point. It's at Snowgate, where, like, kind of like a fire station, you can go and drop off all your little baby bastard Snows. And so I feel like maybe anyone with the last name Snow might symbolize to the wildlings that this is a child that's promised to the others. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I think wildlings don't have bastards, right? Because you fuck who you fuck, right? So they wouldn't name their kids Snow, probably because of superstition, because of knowing that people with the last name Snow are promised to the snow or the ice gods. So I think that's why she was probably like, Snow, ugh. But that could still be the Night King.
Yeah.
Night King could have been a Snow, as someone symbolically who should have been promised to the others, but rose to be the 13th Lord Commander.
Yeah.
But it's funny. So if Ygritte says his name is evil, I'm going to believe it's evil. If his name is evil, it's very fitting that he'd be surrounded by these women that can breed these monsters, almost as if a gravitational pull, like he has a gravitational pull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's why he wields his monster fucker license.
Oh gosh.
But anyway, so as for the actual thing, the actual quote, this is Revelation verse 17:1 through 17:17. Okay. One of the seven angels came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. When the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are people, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. So now there's a lot to unpack in that, but we can see like certain beats that George has definitely taken from this and has woven into the Song of Ice and Fire. One of the things that stands out to me is the idea of 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 is yet to come.
Yeah.
When we think of 5 kings fallen, that's like War of the 5 Kings.
Yeah. And you said something about an 8th king, and I feel like the 8th king is like the 7th king, right?
Yeah. So
yeah,
it says 5 kings have fallen, 1 is, 1 has yet to come. And where was 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, but when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. So my interpretation of this, as far in how it relates to A Song of Ice and Fire, the 5 kings that have fallen, it's the War of the 5 Kings. 4 of them are dead: Joffrey, Renly, Robb Stark, and Balon Greyjoy. Those were 4 of our 5 kings.
Right.
The 5th would be Stannis. Now, Stannis hasn't died, but he has fallen. He's fallen on hard times. He lost the Battle of the Blackwater. He's fallen metaphorically. Then there is the king. 1 is, and 1 has yet to come. Well, our current king is Tommen, and then 1 has yet to come. But we actually have numerous kings who have yet to come. There's Fagon, and there's Euron Greyjoy. And then also, for the purposes of A Song of Ice and Fire, again, when we take the Valyrian idea of the prince who was promised, again, it's not masculine nor feminine. So it also leaves the interpretation that this figure could be a woman. So there's Dany. Mm-hmm. And then the 8th king, the one who will come but will only stay for a short time, I think that's Jon. And
what about Aegon 6?
What's that?
Aegon 6.
Well, Aegon, that's the thing.
Short time.
It could be Aegon, but Aegon's also kind of like a false king. And this is where I think, like, if we go further on to the story of the apocalypse, there is the false king would be the false prophet, which would be the Antichrist. And Fagon does have that parallel because the idea of the Antichrist is that the Antichrist is not going to start as an evil figure. Like one of the things that the Antichrist is supposed to do is he's actually supposed to bring peace to the Holy Land. And anyone who knows anything about
he's supposed to be charismatic and likable.
Yeah. But the thing about, like, when you think geopolitics, especially in the Middle East with Israel and Arab neighbors, the idea of peace in the Holy Land seems like an utter impossibility. So for someone so you would think that if someone were to be able to come forward and make peace on earth, we would view that as a very good thing.
Right.
And yet peace on earth is the thing that the Antichrist is supposed to bring.
Yeah.
And it's possibly the thing that Phagon might bring if he takes King's Landing. The idea is that if Phagon rules, that his rule will actually be pretty good, but then it's going to be brought down, and that Dany will be seen as a usurper, and it's going to be an inverse again of Aegon and Rhaenyra.
Well, the Antichrist is supposed to be like the ultimate subversion of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's like, and George loves that. So in A Song of Ice and Fire, it kind of makes it seem like it's going to be Aegon, but I don't know. Now I'm starting to feel like, well, now we all see it coming. So will it be the ultimate subversion of expectations? Because you're not supposed to see the Antichrist coming. You're supposed to, like, people were saying for the longest that Obama was the Antichrist. Whole thesis is written about it because of they would show clues to the Bible, just like how he comes. Everyone's going to be like, rising up for him, charismatic, a good speaker, like all this stuff. So you're never supposed to know. So I don't know.
But George has also been on record saying, like, you don't, if you're leading up to your story that the butler did it and then people figure out the butler did it, you can't change it to, oh, the chambermaid did it, because that unravels your whole story. So George has yeah. And I mean, that was him sort of taking shots at season 8, how we're all led up to, oh, it's going to be Jon versus the Night King, Jon versus the Night King, Jon versus the Night King. No, Arya does it. And it's like, well, that came out of fucking nowhere. And it's like, no, it's like you can't change your story just because someone figured it out. And I think George doesn't care if people figured out his story, he's still going to get to where he's going.
Okay.
And I don't see him changing that. I think but Phagon to me is very interesting. In fact, before I started doing streams, I was writing essays, and my big one was Phagon, a parallel of kings, princes, and pretenders. That's kind of how I got my start on Reddit.
Okay.
And Phagon is a very loaded character because of how much he relates, not just to both in the books to so many other Targaryens and Blackfires and all that, but also here in this idea of him as this false king, false prophet, someone who's going to bring peace, but it's all a lie. Especially if he does turn out to be a Blackfire, that makes him like the false Targaryen.
Right. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
What's funny is that House Blackfire is potentially more Valyrian than House Targaryen is, because they're the ones that have been out in Essos in the free cities. Assuming that they're still there. Like we're told when Melee's the monstrous is cut down, that ends the male line, but there's still the female line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Phagon's a very interesting character to me. There's so much I could say about Phagon, but this is not a Phagon stream, so we gotta
not.
No. I'll do that one later.
So Melisandre, anything else about that mother?
No, but going on to this, like, so they say like people will hate the prostitute, and obviously people do not like Melisandre. She has her followers, the Queen's men. We're supposed to think of the Queen's men as Selyse followers, but the reality is that they're Melisandre's followers. But she does have her detractors, and we see that like Maester Crescent and Davos and people like that. So when they say like she will be hated and she will be feasted upon, and it kind of leads up to this idea that Mel might have some kind of downfall later on. And I think that's probably going to relate to the burning of Charisse.
Yes. I can see that. She has to. And I think that's one thing, like, I think was done beautifully in the show. Showing like even her downfall was her losing faith in her magic.
Mm-hmm.
She gave up her religion. And, like one of the themes in A Song of Ice and Fire is like giving up the thing that means most to you, like Theon losing his dick, Jaime losing his hand, and Bran losing his legs. It's like Melisandre losing her religion.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you start the character arc, when you get to question who you are and what you have ever done. So yeah, I think we can definitely look forward to that. I hate Melisandre, so I definitely look forward to her walk of shame and her downfall.
All right, so that covers Melisandre pretty good. So I guess I want to move on to this other one. So going back to the revelations, they will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And that sort of brings me back to Daenerys and her vision in the House of the Undying when she sees the naked woman being ravaged by the dwarves. And the idea that the woman is Westeros and the dwarves that are feasting upon her are the kings and all of the that is the War of the Five Kings that is tearing the realm apart. But it also could be Dany herself, especially if she comes in after Fagon. If Fagon is able to come in and sort of bring at least a little bit of peace and hope and prosperity, and then Dany comes in after that. Like, it's one thing if Dany knocks out Cersei, people might cheer for her. But if Fagon knocks out Cersei and then Dany comes to try and knock out Fagon, she will be seen as this foreign invader, this barbarian queen who came across the sea and usurped her nephew.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's looking like how it's going to be, right?
Yeah, and that's because that's sort of how Rhaenyra was viewed in the Dance of the Dragons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's like, they crowned him in front of everybody. She's like, oh gosh. So now I have to not only prove that I'm the rightful heir, but prove that I'm better than him, and prove that I'm the rightful heir, and prove that I'm as good as a man. It's like, yeah, just made her job that much harder. But we'll see.
That's what's so great about this story is like George has just incorporated so many layers upon layers upon layers. It's like every conflict has so many different multitudes to it and there's never a good clear-cut decision on what to do. There's no right path because one action, while seeming good at the moment, will also have a ripple effect because it's also going to cause all these other things. Yes, Dany might have the better claim. Yes, Fagon might not even be legitimate. He might be a Blackfire. But the problem is that nobody cares. Nobody cares. Because I always come back to that line about the small folk don't care who sits the Iron Throne. The small folk pray for healthy children, good rains, and a summer without end, as long as they're left in peace. So they're not going to care if Fagon is a Blackfire or a Targaryen, if he's able to do good, if he's able to quell the war, kind of clean up the Riverlands, just anything to make things better. And trust me, like right now, especially after you read A Feast for Crows, you know the bar is set really fucking low in Westeros right now. Yeah. It's
like, are you better than the Mountain?
Like Fagon doesn't really have to do much to like. Fagon is a bologna sandwich, and everyone's going to see him as filet mignon because they have nothing to eat right now.
Yeah, it's getting bad. Getting some Dragon Pit vibes.
But then Dany starts off as first the mother of abominations. We think of first her child before the hatching of the dragons. We have the birth of Rhaego, Khal Drogo's son.
Right.
And baby Rhaego is born twisted and malformed. I have the quote from Mirri Maz Duur.
Twisted.
Monstrous. Yes, monstrous, twisted. I drew him forth myself. He was scaled like a lizard, blind with the stub of a tail, and small leather wings like the wings of a bat. When I touched him, the flesh sloughed off the bone, and inside he was full of grave worms and the stink of corruption. He had been dead for years.
How rude. That is my baby boy. You do not call somebody's kid ugly.
That's an ugly baby. But when we think of like this scene, when Mirri Maz Duur is trying to save Khal Drogo, and yeah, she saves him from the brink of death, but he's basically a vegetable. But she tells Dany, like, no matter what you see, no matter what you hear, you can't come in. And but she goes into labor, and so she goes in under the tent, and she gets wrapped up in whatever this blood magic ritual that Mary Mazdor is doing.
Yeah.
And it blurs the lines on what caused baby Rhaego to be like this. Was it a result of the magic? Was he going to be like that no matter what? And is this another case of Targaryen dragon genes, like this whole blood of the dragon, these weird dragon-esque babies that sometimes crop up throughout Targaryen history?
I think Rhaego was fine and Mary Mazdor just did some magic shit. Because I do believe, first of all, like the inbreeding is almost out. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but it being Drogo's seed kind of eliminates that dragon gene it's still there, right?
Mhm.
Because Daenerys is super incest, but I'm saying her breeding with Drogo is a win for that. It's a good thing. That's number one. And then number two, aren't there sections where she feels the baby kicking, or like she feels that mother's sense of like, I need to be strong for my baby. That's what gets her to like stick up for herself. So I think the baby was fine up until then.
Yeah, but the thing is too is like the same sort of thing sort of happens Rhaenyra when she's pregnant with Visenya. Everything seems fine until she gets the news about the crown being usurped, and then she goes into an early labor, and she gives birth to her little
Visenya.
Yeah, her little Visenya. Another quote, I have the one from one day I will learn how to do these notes right. Mushroom, here we go. She was born twisted and malformed, with a hole in her chest where her heart should have been, and a stubby scaled tail. That is the description we're given of baby Visenya in Fire and Blood. And it's not what we got in House of the Dragon. But when we see later on the prosthetic that they used after it had been cleaned up, and we get a better look at it, we can see that it did have like a scaled head. It did have some dragon-esque features. But
Rhaenyra and Daemon had that child, so that's the blending of the genes, very close.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
What am I trying? Uncle and niece, like that's pretty close.
Yeah. And when we get we'll get it when we get to Visenya and Maegor, and that's where we get our most examples of these these weird dragon babies, which is the one that Maegor fathers. But right now, so that is Rhaego, but Rhaego also sort of becomes part of the sacrifice that's needed to hatch the dragons, because that's the next thing. Like Daenerys climbs on the funeral pyre of Khal Drogo, but she comes out of the flames. She is the unburnt, and that's when we have the dragons are born. And it took like this great sacrifice. Dany essentially sacrifices the love of her life, her child, and herself to birth the dragons.
Well, all three of them have king's blood, and if you believe in power of king's blood, Drogo is a king, one. Mm-hmm. Rhaego is the son of a king, two, and Daenerys is a queen and daughter of a king. So those three sacrifices birth three dragons.
Yeah, it's a very potent blood sacrifice that went into doing it.
Yes.
And it brings up the question of like, if that's what happened, like what did Aegon, the unlikely Egg from the Dunk and Egg novels, like what did he do wrong at Summerhall? Like, did he have the general idea, but not like did he not have all the pieces in order, or did he like majorly fuck up to cause Summerhall to happen?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go with he didn't have the pieces in order. Maybe, I feel like maybe he didn't even know that you're supposed to be sacrificing three kings. Or like, but I don't know. Very interesting though. Very interesting.
Yeah. It's one of those things like we need more Dunk and Egg novels so that we can see more of that.
So like I kind of want to talk about the psychology of like mothers and like women. So we go around our life like, oh, oh, like this is me, this is my personality. And then you become a mother and you literally become a different person. Your brain is secreting different hormones in different orders. And that's what I mean by you become a different person. Like literally, chemically, you're a different person. And the reason you do that is for many reasons, but even if you put humans aside, when you look at the animal kingdom, like it biologically needs to happen for there to be reproduction, for the child to grow up and make more children. The mother has to take care of them. The mother has to put food in their beak. But for us as humans, because we live in a patriarchal society, we're all kind of products of our mothers, and even more so before we had schooling. Right now, they say the most influential person in a school's life, and the most influential person in a kid's life is their third grade teacher, because they pinpointed that that's the age that you kind of start forming your personality, and the type of accent your teacher has and the type of rules they give you influence you. But before you went to school in medieval times, it was your mom. So what type of mom would Daenerys be? Like what kind of values would she impart like on her monsters?
Mhm.
Yeah, I just want to give like that point of view.
It's the road not taken because it couldn't be taken. It's like if Rhaego had lived, if Khal Drogo had lived. I mean, well, we're given that that vision of a bronze-skinned man with silver hair, the stallion who mounts the world. Because this would be a kid who's Targaryen blood, but is raised in Dothraki culture. And Khal Drogo did say, like, I will sail across the narrow sea. I will take on the men in the iron suits, and all of that. So it's like this I think it would have been very much a gang. If Rhaego had lived, I think he would have been like very much a Genghis Khan of our story.
Well, yeah, he would have grown up with a chip on his shoulder, just like Dany has. Like, you need to retake my lands. Did you know that Robert Baratheon sent killers after me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to avenge your mother and stuff. And like, also, your blood of the dragon and your blood of Drogo, they killed your dad. You know, like, so this kid, like, he doesn't grow up having a life for himself. He grows up repeating the sins of the father, even though it's his mom. But you guys know the phrase. You end up living your parents' life, or yeah. You're like a puppet on their strings. And it's not even like malicious. Like, I don't see Dany trying to do that being maliciously, but it's also something like a self-fulfilling prophecy that they can't even help because of the circumstances they're born into.
Yeah.
And so even the point I was going to on, I promise I'll let you speak on your own live stream in a second.
Oh, no, go ahead. I had you for a reason.
Is like, sometimes like you can look at it as like two archetypes. So you have like the evil mom, like you can think of like the evil like mom who like drinks and like puts out her cigarette on your arm, who slaps you, puts you in the closet. And that kind of mom, that's kind of like the arc, like what the fandom thinks of Visenya, that she's just like, just this evil mom. And those type of women could breed monsters, but also nice, beautiful, Betty Crocker, Martha Stewart type moms can also breed monsters. When you look up Ted Bundy and you look up like so many serial killers, a lot of times, well, we know that they when we look it up, their parents did have like psychological issues, but it's not the type of case where you could blame their moms. A lot of times there's now the dads you can look at, but the moms kind of they help with the homework. They bake the cookies, but you still turned into Ted Bundy. So I also want to say that like both of these mothers, like, or all the mothers that we're going to be looking at, can still breed monsters, no matter their intent or their personality type. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, because every serial killer, every dictator, they all had a mother, and you can do everything perfectly and still end up with a monster. And that's when we get back to the nature versus nurture debate, is that sometimes like even if you can raise the kid right with good values and treat them right and never abuse them, but if they're born a sociopath, there's no curing that. It's just something that's there. And I think you think of some not every serial like some serial killers have a sob story, broken home, and all that. And then some had really great lives and still turned out to be assholes. That's just it happens.
But you just said you can have a great mom, and if you're born a sociopath or psychopath, then that's just what you are. But I also think that niceness and that safety breeds. Think of Joffrey, right? Mm-hmm. Let's pretend Joffrey is not born a psychopath, but his mother's love, Cersei's obsessive love, breeds an environment where Joffrey has confidence. He has that word is what is that phrase? Delusions of grandeur. Mm-hmm. When your mother says, your kid can be a horrible singer, but your mother is head of the PTA, and she forces them to make you head in the musical, the lead in the musical. It's stuff like that where your mother's love kind of, this is not the nature, but the nurture debate, that your mother's love can turn you into a psychopath because she's made you believe that you're so wonderful and you're better than everyone and you deserve it. And she believes in you.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we see when we move on from Dany to Visenya and Maegor. So this is one that's Maegor has been a character that's intrigued me for so many reasons. And because I said, when we were talking before we went live, when I was giving you the rundown on kind of what I wanted to do with this.
Yeah.
From the moment Maegor is born, it's the circumstances surrounding it are so bizarre. And this is what I want to get at with this. This is a theory that I've had kicking around for a while. It's been influenced by other theories that are out there and also real world parallels. And I want to get your idea on it. Do you think Aenys and Maegor? So Aegon the Conqueror has 2 sister wives, but he only has 2 children, 1 son through each of them. But their paternity is up for debate. And I've always wondered, this is what I want to ask you. Do you think Aenys and Maegor are actually Aegon's kids?
George, of course, is a genius, so he leaves it open.
Mm-hmm.
It could be either way. I think it's juicier storytelling if he's not. Mm-hmm. Because as a feminist, it's fuck the patriarch. It's hey, you think these are Aegon's descendants? They're not. They're
oh, yeah. And it's great because okay,
they're
so
Rhaenys descendants.
So and it makes House of the Dragon with the inclusion of Aegon's prophecy and how George is probably now going to start kind of weaving this into the story when we finally get to WoW. You could call it a retcon or whatever, but I think the groundwork for it was already laid. House of the Dragon is just shining more of a light onto it.
Yeah.
But Aegon has this prophecy of, I need to conquer Westeros to defeat the White Walkers. And Aegon fails in that endeavor. He's unable to bring Dorne into the fold. But I think another great fault of Aegon would be if he couldn't secure an heir either, if neither of these boys are his. And when you think about you have 2 wives, but you're only able to produce 2 children. And of the one, his Visenya that he married out of duty, Rhaenys that he married out of love, it said for every 1 day he spent with Visenya, he spent 10 days with Rhaenys. But right. Rhaenys also had many favorites. She liked singers and storytellers and mummers and all of that. And it said that she entertained them in more ways than one. So you're already laid out with this idea that, okay, right there, this kid that she births may not be Aegon's because we know, or at least according to the Maesters, the history that we're told, that she was sleeping with other men. As for Visenya, she doesn't give birth to Maegor until 12 AC. So for over a decade into Aegon's rule, she's unable to get pregnant. And I'm sure, like, as the years go by, like the rumors start to get louder. Oh, she's barren, she's barren, she's barren. Then all of a sudden she's pregnant. But I've always wondered, like, maybe it wasn't her fault. Maybe Aegon was the problem. If Aegon was shooting blanks, if he had slow swimmers or narrow urethra, like however you want to, whatever you want to deem it as, I think Aegon was the problem.
Yeah, it makes sense. They said that there was like an Aegon the Conqueror show in production where Aegon was supposed to be a drunken buffoon and that his sisters do everything. So it kind of makes sense. If George was behind that, then that would kind of make sense that like everyone thinks Aegon the Conqueror. We look at all the pictures that the fandom drew of him. We were looking for scraps. We had like 2 sentences of what Aegon. We still don't know what he actually looked like. We don't know the length of his nose or all that stuff. But we all drew the same pictures, right? With the breastplate and the shield, and he's 6 foot and he has muscles. He looks like Robert, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny that we all think that in actuality, he could have been later Robert. Like he could have just been like a drunk, and like it could have been Visenya that's like, oh my God, she saw that he's gonna die soon, and like we need to take care of this problem in the north. Our line's gonna give up, and Aegon's not gonna do it. I have to make this baby out of magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see kind of be this, being that type of thing where it's the women, of course, being like, we just have to continue the Targaryen line, and it's not going to be Aegon.
When I think of Aegon and having an inability to produce children of his own, I think of like it's very much a punch in the face to this masculine idea of the great conqueror, the strong man who comes across the sea, conquers a continent, fire and blood and sword. But he's sterile, he's impotent or whatever, and he just and
like Damon.
And he does all these he does a man who like unites all of this but can't keep it. But in order to secure it, you need an heir, and if he's unable to produce one, then that puts a huge damper on his legacy.
What if he was gay?
That I'm not sure. Because they say that's the other thing is when we get down to the nitty gritty is that all the history that we're told in Fire and Blood and World of Ice and Fire, we need to take with a grain of salt because it's always written by maesters. Now, for me, I don't think Aegon was gay, but I do think he was sterile. I don't think his sterile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think he just had. I think he was shooting blanks.
It's like, imagine it's like, your job is to unite this kingdom and continue the Targaryen line because Whitewalkers are coming. And you're like, but I'm impotent. Like, it's like you're given this impossible task.
Yeah.
What do? Well, just realize that like, hey, your 2 half-blood sisters literally have the genetics to do everything that he can do. Yeah.
But that's the thing, like, too, if we take this idea that Aenys and Maegor are not Aegon's, or at the very least that Aenys is not Aegon's biological son, then that means that the entire Targaryen dynasty is through the matrilineal, is through the mother line, it's through the female line. And that makes me think of why Jaehaerys is the way he is, because Jaehaerys is a son of Aenys. Now, when he tries to uphold this patriarchal ideal of putting a son on the throne, there are many reasons for it. One, he is not a first son, he is a third son, and to get the throne from Maegor mean having to jump over his own sister Rhaena, because he had an older sister.
Yeah.
Securing the throne meant upholding this line of sons, because it meant securing the support of any lord who also had an older sister.
Right.
Because if you go like doing like the Dornish thing, it all goes to the oldest child regardless of sex, then how many older sisters to certain lords are going to press their own claim?
Yeah.
But also, if Jaehaerys ever had reason to suspect that his father wasn't Aegon's, that his father was a bastard, and that this is all coming through the mother line, that would give him another reason to try and cement male primogeniture. Like, I need to nip this in the bud before this gets out of hand. It has to go to the sons because I'm already on shaky ground.
We'll see.
Yeah.
It also could just, both of them are Aegon's sons and it's fine. And not everybody is like super fertile. Sometimes people can just have one child and that's that. And I also think that, like, you know how they say with great power comes great responsibility. Even the children of the forest say it. They said that our numbers are few because of balance. Because the children of the forest live long lives and because they wield so much power. You can't have a million of those motherfuckers running around. Like, because you know how they say too many cooks in the kitchen. You can't have too many powerful beings at once because we're just going to nuclear freaking fry the whole planet. You have to balance it. So I think that, like, with all the power circulating in the Targaryen bloodline, that is, you have to have balance. And that is why we get these children born with wings and no heart and things like that, because magic has a cost. So you're not going to be fruitful. And we were taught that lesson with Jaehaerys and Alysanne. Y'all fucked around. Y'all had 13 kids and none of them made it to the throne. That's crazy. You imagine having 13 kids and none of them can sit the Iron Throne for you. It has to be a grandkid. And it's just showing you that it doesn't matter how many kids you have, Targaryens. There has to be a balance.
It's like, now when we were talking to Rhaego, I brought up Genghis Khan or Chinggis Khan, whichever pronunciation you want to go with. And this idea, like the great conqueror who conquered the world. Now, Chinggis Khan, if every Mongolian traces their ancestry to him, and to an extent, like, they're actually right. This is a guy who spread his seed far and wide. But then I kind of compare that to another great conqueror in history, which is Alexander the Great. Because Aegon the Conqueror has a lot of parallels to Alexander the Great as this conqueror. And I'm not sure, like, if you're familiar with Alexander, like, everyone probably has heard of Alexander the Great, but do you know anything about his wives and his children?
No.
No. Okay. So, like, this is a quick history lesson, and I just want to get on this because this was fascinating to me when I put it together. So Alexander the Great had 3 wives in his life, but only one son. Possibly 2. There is the idea that he might have had a bastard son named Heracles, but most people dismiss that. So he has 3 wives, but only one son, Alexander the Fourth. None of it mattered because Alexander's empire fell apart before his body even got a chance to go cold. But so he has 3 wives, only one son. And if we are to believe, while most historians accept that Alexander the Fourth, little baby Alex, is his son, if we believe the rumors spread by Alexander's his enemies, specifically his sister-in-law, Eurydice of Macedon, and then they bring up the idea that kid's not Alexander's either. They call into question his parentage because Alexander the Fourth wasn't born until after Alexander the Great had already died. And if we believe Eurydice, then his mother Roxana was a whore. So like it brings up like this idea again, like this great conqueror, this super masculine virile man. Well, it isn't actually, no, not virile, because he isn't able to secure the line. And it just goes into this, like, this idea, this Alexander Aegon parallel of, like, the man who conquered the world but couldn't hold it together because he couldn't have a kid of his own. It's just it punches into the idea of this masculine man because he couldn't do the thing that men are expected to do in that position, which is secure your line.
So you know Night Fires?
No, I don't.
It's a short story that George wrote. There's actually, I think, a show about it that might be on Netflix too, that recently made. But basically, without getting too spoilery, there is a powerful, super smart IQ woman, and she's kind of like, she reads as kind of like asexual, in that, like, she's so smart, I'm just gonna program it. She, like, can make a spaceship, and stuff. Like, she's she reads as asexual and she doesn't have time for relationship, but she feels the need to be a mother. So she kind of clones herself, but as a boy, and that's her son that she kind of raises. Doesn't that sound like Visenya?
Yeah, actually does.
And she thinks to herself that like my mind is so great, it's worth reproducing.
Mm-hmm.
Think about Visenya saying that like, okay, so Aegon over there is sterile or gay, or just I've been trying for 10 years and it's not working. And Visenya truly embodying being a mother of monsters. So think about the type of woman that thinks that she's so great that her DNA needs to be replicated. And think about the woman who has unlimited flight miles. If Visenya needs to go to a shy and ask the unforgivable the naughty questions, like, don't they say that no question is forbidden in a shy? Who's gonna stop Rhaenyra? Or I said Rhaenyra. Who's gonna stop Visenya? Who's gonna even know? Rhaenyra can fly. Visenya could fly to a shy for like 3 days, and you can just think she's up in her room having her period, right? Tell a guy you're having your period, and he'll leave you alone. And she could be getting potions, getting spices, and I feel like I could see it in my mind, and maybe it's my headcanon, it's just willful belief of her just out of sheer will creating Maegor. With, of course, magic, with the right incantations and the right sword. But the question for me is that Maegor, except for him possibly being sterile, is almost the perfect science experiment or the perfect spell. Because he does grow up fine. He does have the strength of like the mountain, right? Cutting heads off of horses. So it worked. You did have your strong, amazing son who had the willpower to seize the throne and take it and fight in that battle of Trial of Seven. But what price did Visenya pay?
Yeah.
Because if that spell worked that good, girl, what the fuck did you sacrifice? Because I've never seen a spell work that good.
Oh, no, I actually agree with you for most of that. Like, I'm not sure about a shy because a shy is very far away.
Just an example of that everything is, nothing is denied to her because she has a
nothing. She definitely could have at least gotten some of that knowledge from somewhere. But yeah, because she spends over a decade passes and she's not pregnant, and all of a sudden, so Rhaenys dies. Aenys is a sick kid, but he's gonna get the throne, and Visenya's like, okay, I can't. Probably looking at this sick nephew of hers, the son of her dead sister, and just be like, I can't let him have it. And then getting that desperate, because then when she does get pregnant, like, so to go over a decade, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere.
What if Visenya just sees a premonition of Aenys dying?
Yeah.
She doesn't know when, but she just sees, like, it's not even like she's mean to him. It's like, well, this is a temporary king.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Like, well, no, because they say, like, after Rhaenys dies, like, Aenys, who was already kind of small and sickly, becomes even more withdrawn after his mother's death. So she's probably looking at, like, this is our one egg in the basket. I can't let it all fall on this one, especially because even if he lives, he's going to be weak.
Yeah, and I think doesn't Aenys only rule for, like, 4 years?
Yeah, his rule is not very long. It's not long, and it's filled with strife. And this is when we get more into Maegor, like, because the thing that leads Maegor to the war against the faith starts with Aenys, and it's Aenys trying to marry his son to his children together. The idea was that the faith was willing to look the other way with Aegon, Visenya, and Rhaenys because they're not Westerosi. They're like, okay, that's your foreign and that's your custom. We can accept that. But when Aenys and Maegor are born and no daughters are born, and you have sons that are raised to be Westerosi, the expectation was that these two are going to follow normal Westerosi values, which means no sister fucking. And when Aenys marries a woman from House Valerian, they're seen as like, okay, that's far enough. I mean, yeah, Targaryens and Valerians have been intermarrying for generations, but it's still seen as far enough removed.
Different last names.
It's seen as far enough removed that it's acceptable.
Yeah, same bloodline, but different last names. That'll pass. It's fine.
Yeah. But then when Aenys has his own kids and he has a son and a daughter, and he's like, okay, my daughter Rhaena is going to marry my son Aegon. That's when the Faith goes in saying, no. That was fine for your dad. It's not fine for you. And that's what so the seeds of Maegor's war against the Faith actually started with Aenys. Because of that. Yeah. But when Visenya does get pregnant, so she shows up like 12 AC, it's been over a decade, no baby. All of a sudden she's pregnant. And then she gives birth. And Maegor, from his description, he's like twice the size, twice the weight of Aenys. Like he's like a 15-pounder. This is a big fucking baby. And he grows up like by age 8.
And also think about it. Do you think there were maesters in the room with Visenya? Or do you think it was Visenya who came down and said, here's my baby?
I think she soloed that.
That's what I'm saying. Thing I'm saying is like, I think nobody has proof of anything. Like, you might have seen a belly, but it could have been a balloon under that belly. Surprise, bitch. Like, sorry to be cussing on your channel, but like, I'm just saying the whole process, like, we don't know. I could just see Visenya coming down the stairs and saying, this is the new prince, everybody.
Yeah, I've always called Maegor Rosemary's baby, and I looked at him like as a science experiment. This is like the magic demon test tube baby of Westeros. Like we don't know exactly what went into this, but in my headcanon, like this was not the circumstances of Maegor's birth are not normal.
Okay, something horrible just crept into my mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
I was just thinking about like what's the worst thing that can happen, but also what is a big sacrifice? Like what's the price that Visenya paid for Maegor? So I was like, well, what if she killed a living dragon? Like she sacrificed the heart of a dragon, and I was like, that's not good enough. But then I'm like, what if she went old school and somehow magically mated with a dragon? Like coitus, obviously, a reptile and a mammal won't work unless you do the physical things, but put a magic thing in there.
We've seen those tapestries.
Huh?
Those tapestries in House of the Dragon. Tapestries
that Maegor put up. He's like, this is how I was born, y'all.
Maybe that's the clue.
But, okay.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I do think Maegor is another one of these blood, sex, magic things. Like maybe it involved Aegon's seed. Maybe it was just some sort of magic to kind of like up jump the swimmers and get them going. And that could possibly be it. But I don't know. I don't know what the circumstances are. But I will stand firm that whatever led to the birth of Maegor was not the natural mommy and daddy had a night in bed together thing. No, something different went into making that kid. But when Maegor grows up, so he by age 8, I think it was, is when he gets kicked by a palfrey, and that's when he like stabs it to death. And some poor stable boy comes in to try and break up the fight, and Maegor cuts his face off. By age 12, he's unseating actual knights and tourneys. 13, that's when Visenya gives him Dark Sister. 13 is also when he is first married to his first wife. That is Cersei Hightower. The first of the 6 wives is Cersei Hightower. And she was 10 years older than him. So this is a 23-year-old woman who just got married off to a 13-year-old boy. But Maegor, if we were to believe him, he tells us that he consummated that marriage 12 times that night. But so like, yeah. And
in
then
the hood, I was gonna say in the hood we call that a pussy pumper.
Some quick recoil.
But still not good enough. Still can't have no kids.
But it's not good enough to get her pregnant. Cersei Hightower, of the 6 wives that Maegor will have, he will impregnate 3, and Cersei Hightower is not one of them.
Yeah. But the first time, we could say that the problem is I pronounce it Cerise. You know, George lets us pronounce it
Okay.
however we want. But the first time you could blame Cerise and you could say that, like, hey, it's your first time trying it out. She's the barren one. On to the next one. Okay. So we don't have proof that he's barren yet. It's just like, oh, she's an old woman. It's her fault. Okay.
Yeah.
What happens next?
So age 16, he's knighted, and
He gets Blackfire though, right?
yeah, his
So what does he do with Dark Sister? Is he like double swording it?
Maegor was the only king to wield both Blackfire and Dark Sister.
Okay.
Yeah, he had them both. His mother gifted Dark Sister to him, and then later on, Aenys gifts Blackfire to him. But then Visenya points to that and says, "Oh, he gave him the sword. That's him admitting he's weak." And that's that's like the first seed planted that puts Visenya into being like, Maegor's the one that should be king, not Aenys, not Aenys' son Aegon. That's like, Maegor should be king, and the fact that Aenys gave him Blackfire is him admitting that he's not good enough. Like that was the initial reasoning for Visenya to start pushing for Maegor to take the throne.
Meanwhile, we just call it brotherly love. Just being nice.
Yeah,
it's a good Christmas present. Jeez.
Yeah. But not like what's happening there is people, and this is something that does happen a lot at Song of Ice and Fire, is people putting weight into symbols.
Yeah.
And especially, and that becomes more of a thing, especially after the Dance of the Dragon, when all the dragons die out, the symbols become the thing. That's why so much importance was placed on Blackfire, and that's one of the reasons we get the Blackfire rebellions. When Eustace Osgray talks about Daemon Blackfire, like he was the one with the sword, and Egg has to tell him, like, the sword is not the kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we can already, though, even when dragons are still about, and Maegor is going to claim Balerion the Black Dread, he has the biggest, baddest dragon to have ever lived, but we're already getting importance of sword itself and the crown, and also the crown of Aegon the Conqueror will also become a hugely symbolic thing of who has the right to rule.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So with Maegor, he has his first wife, but things aren't going well. He's not siring any children, so he takes a second wife, and the second wife is Alice Haraway, and he does. But this is the next thing that flies in the face of the faith, because Cersei Hightower was the niece of the High Septon. So when Maegor takes a second wife, the High Septon is like, no, you can't fucking do that. Like, no. Yeah. Your brother's already treading a fine line trying to marry his children off together. Now, who the fuck do you think you are taking a second wife? So Aenys had already started the rumblings, and now Maegor is just pushing it further.
Right.
And like they call her the whore of Haraway.
There you go with your. There you go. So someone being called a whore.
Mm-hmm. But again, like, it takes a long time. Like, now, when it comes to Maegor's 3 stillborn children that he'll have, Alice Haraway is the first one to become pregnant. But that doesn't happen until Maegor's third wife comes into the picture, Tyanna of the Tower. So Maegor, after taking a second wife, he is told, like, either you set her aside or you go into exile for 5 years. He chooses exile. He goes to Pentos, and while he's in Pentos, he meets Tyanna of the Tower. And according to the history, we're told him, Alice, and Tyanna just have like a whole bunch of three-ways while they're out there. But when he returns after Aenys' death, Visenya flies to Pentos and brings him back. She like smuggles Maegor back into Westeros with Alice Haraway, and he brings Tyanna of the Tower with them. So now he's back with 3 wives. And this is when we get the first monster baby from him. And that's Alice Haraway. She goes into labor after only being pregnant for 3 months. So this is a very, very premature birth.
Yeah.
And the child is described as eyeless and twisted. And that's like the first so this is the first abomination of Maegor. This eyeless, twisted child that he brings that comes after his exile. So, but he's like written it off. It's like, okay, you know, they know, like, we're looking at this from medieval times. Like, birth is never a guarantee. It happens. Stillborns happen. This is the first the first child he had that seemed viable, and it didn't work. He doesn't have reason to suspect that there's anything really wrong with him, or even Alice for that matter, yet.
Right.
It's when the other things start to happen that we really start to question what's up with you. Something's not right here.
Like, why is your sperm purple? I don't think you can have kids, Maegor.
Mm-hmm. So Maegor's war against the faith comes, and when he returns with Tiana of the Tower, he is referred to as by the High Septon again, because now the High Septon was already pissed off about Alice Haraway and his niece being slighted for that. Now he comes back with a third woman, so the High Septon's even more pissed off, and he refers to Maegor as the Abomination and his whores. And again, we take that line, the Abomination and his whores, and we go right back to Revelation, the Abomination, the whore of Babylon. And this is like, it's almost as if George is directly pulling this and putting it into the words of the High Septon's mouth by referring to Maegor as the Abomination and the wives as the whores of the Abomination.
That's funny, because that really makes me think that the Targaryens are on the wrong side and that the Whitewalkers are the good guys. Because it seems like the Targaryens are like bringing on the apocalypse. Like, I got in this big fight because I'm one of those leeches that lives in the comments, and I'll spend a week going back and forth with somebody in the comments, baby. I am petty. I need to have the last word. And the last fight I had was someone trying to say that Daenerys if Daenerys didn't go over the wall, then the Night King wouldn't have gotten the dragon. And so basically saying it was all Daenerys' fault. And of course, I was arguing, well, the Night King knew that was going to happen and it was a trap, blah, blah, blah. But it does get me thinking, Aegon has this dream, and we see Melisandre and so many people misinterpreting these dreams, these prophecies, or just these game of telephone, right? These things that are just passed around. And it's like, what if, like, the Targaryens unifying Westeros and living so long, like being able to, pass through all these generations is like, it's like you're saying, the horror and all these omens that they're bringing on the apocalypse. That something will happen where, like, they will, like the show, cause the Night King to be able to gain this influence or this power or something, or that the White Walkers, the others, are the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that the Targaryens literally are abominations because dragons are abominations. I think dragons upset the balance, right?
Oh, that
seasons. I think the birth of dragons is why the seasons are out of whack, because they're abominations.
Okay, I got something for you. So let me throw this at you, and I actually got an artwork that I gotta share for this one to really drive the point home on this one. But when we were talking Relorism, we were talking Zoroastrianism. In one of Zoroastrian stories, there is a monster called the Azidahaka, and it is a 3-headed dragon who attempts to swallow the sun, and he is defeated by a fire god named Atar. Atar, Azor, like a 3-headed dragon tries to swallow the sun. and we think like the long night. The sun turned its back. The sun was cast out, and when now as for artwork, I do. Let me bring it up to. Yes, I have it up. So I'm so bad at this. How do I share artwork on this here?
There should be a share screen button or share.
Yeah.
On the bottom where it says present and settings. In the meantime,
there it was. Yeah. One day I'll learn how to do this. My tabs. Sure. Okay, so this is artwork by Alessandro Magno. And it's drawn in a King Ghidorah style from Godzilla, but it's a representation of the Ozzy Dahaka, the three-headed dragon who eats the sun.
Okay.
And you notice kind of has a very the resemblance to the Targaryen sigil. Pretty uncanny. Like if you were to take this and employ a silhouette of it, it would be the three-headed dragon of the Targaryen sigil.
Right.
So this, and I was thinking okay, so this myth in Zoroastrianism, a three-headed dragon swallows the sun. And that did lead me to the idea, like, what if it wasn't the Whitewalkers that caused the long night? What if it was dragons that caused the long night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we're going to go science fiction, a moon cracking and being absorbed into the planet, or just cracking and going away, would fuck up the axis. Yeah. And the axis is where we get our seasons from. Just going at it from the scientific standpoint. But if we're just going to do just pure magic, yes, dragons are upsetting the balance, because what is a predator for a dragon? What is a predator for a dragon? There isn't. And if there isn't a predator, then there's no balance.
Whatever could be a predator for a dragon is whatever gave Balerion that fucking scar when he flew away with Arah Targaryen, when she came back with those fire worms inside of her.
Yeah. But it could be another dragon. Maybe it's not a predator, but it could be an equal.
Yeah, it could be an equal. Could be a wild dragon out in what's the remnants of Valyria. And I do think that there are wild dragons out there. Still in Valyria, like into the parts of Valyria where no one can get to because no one can get past the stone men. And out in the Shadowlands, like past Ashai, past Tagirijus, out into the actual mountains of the Morn, where demons and dragons are said to roost. Like, they might be out there. And I did a lot of that theory and more in my first solo stream, and the Carcosa and Beyond stream. I went into that idea, and it's something I'm going to explore a lot more when I do the Romance of the Three Emperors. There's a lot of King in Yellow dragon symbolism with the yellow emperors in Yi. So I'm going to table that for now, but it's something I'm really excited to get more into later on in another stream.
Okay. So Visenya. Yeah, so I think Visenya, we're talking about mother of monsters. Visenya is like the perfect person to be a mother of monsters because of, like I was talking about earlier, that willpower, that will to live, that will of like, I am deserving and I can do it. So like, what I'm trying to say is her personality type is what you would imagine Hitler's mom to be. You could imagine Ted Bundy having a mom like Visenya, just someone that's like, by any means necessary, I don't care about your feelings. Shut up, stop crying. Like, you brought home an A-, like that kind of mom, as opposed to Melisandre and Daenerys. who we previously talked about, which I feel like Daenerys would be like the nice like hipster mom, who and then Melisandre would kind of just be like maybe like that absentee mom who's like she's focused on her little career and like she only needs you when it's time for a burning, when she needs when she needs to leech you or whatever. But yeah, Visenya's like the stage mom.
Yeah, Visenya, and when it comes to Visenya and Maegor, this is what I was talking about when I said like what blurs the line between literal and metaphorical monsters is Maegor, because the circumstances surrounding his birth are already pretty weird. So he might be a literal monster if he is like some kind of science experiment creation. But if he is just a human, like let's say if somehow Aegon was able to impregnate Visenya in the natural way and Maegor is just born like any other baby would be born, there's still the cruelty.
He's still a monster.
He's still a monster. Exactly. He still has all the monstrous aspects of humanity.
He still kills a horse and a cat and a woman and a steward and and a knight and another knight. And he probably talked bad about people. He probably did other crimes that didn't involve killing. So yeah, I mean, it's very funny. So yeah, whether Visenya used a potion or whether she just used her personality, she still gave birth to a monster.
Yeah, and Maegor, even when it comes to his monster babies, what blurs the line on that one is that all of his, according to Tyanna the Tower, she poisoned all of them. So that also brings into the question of was there ever anything actually wrong with Maegor's seed, or was it fuck you.
I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. All right.
You're getting put in timeout. This is the first time I've had to. That's the first time I've had to boot somebody.
No, me too. I'm just like, who? Who are they talking about? I almost forgot. I'm like, oh yeah.
This is another reason why I need to hit the 1,000 subscriber milestone. That's also when I could probably mod people, so I can take.
No, you can mod people.
I can.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm learning new things.
You can click on any person's name right now, and it should give you the option. Do you want to make them a moderator? And then you say yes.
All right, I'm gonna have to start recruiting soon.
Yeah.
Anyway, so getting back on that nastiness aside, let's get back on topic. So Maegor, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back on track here.
I don't even know where we were. Visenya, Maegor. Yeah.
So Tyanna the Tower says that she poisoned Maegor's pregnant wives. But this also comes after torture. So it's another one of those things that blurs the line of, did she poison them, or was this a confession she made under duress, like just to make her death come quicker? Like that's the thing that George does with constantly blurring the lines. He blurs with Maegor. He blurs the line from the start, from his birth to the births of his stillborn children. It's always left up for interpretation what exactly the issue was. Was there something about Maegor that made his seed like poisoned, or was it outside interference from Tyanna the Tower? Like whether it be jealousy, wanting to be the only queen, the only one to mother a child, like we don't know. All we know is that Maegor had these 3 children, and that all 3 of them came out deformed and monstrous. The one from Alice Haraway, Eyeless and Twisted, and then his 3 black brides. When Maegor's becoming more desperate to sire an heir, he forcibly marries 3 women who already have children. So 3 women who have already proven that they can carry a child to term. And 2 of those women, so he marries Jane Westerling, The Black Brides are Eleanor Costain, Jane Westerling, and his own niece, Rhaena Targaryen, who was the wife of Aegon the Uncrowned, the older sister of King Jaehaerys. And he impregnates Eleanor Costain and Jane Westerling, but both of them, again, give birth to these monstrosities. Eleanor Costain's child is eyeless with small wings, and Jane Westerling, she goes into another premature birth. She gives birth 3 months early and is born stillborn, monstrous, lacking arms and legs, and having both sets of genitalia. Like these are the descriptions that we are given of Maegor's 3 children that came out.
I see it as like, imagine if somebody can like go in our genome and find the link in our double helix where they could put a potion and it would make us turn into primates. Right? Mm-hmm. If we say that that's the common ancestor, right? I think it's the same thing with the Targaryen line where it's like, hey, maybe there is a potion out there that directly corresponds to something that will revert you back to whenever the Targaryen bloodline linked with the dragon bloodline. So that's why what I'm trying to say is that I think it's all poison. But the reason that it's looking like, oh, it could have just been Maegor, I do think that Maegor is infertile. Let me just put that out there. But I don't think that these births were natural, that these stillborns were natural. I believe that they were poisoned, but the poison is making it, the way the poison manifests is these abominations, these wings and these deformities. Mm-hmm. Because it's like reverting their genes.
So you believe Tyanna when she says that she poisoned, that it wasn't just a confession under duress?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, I actually don't know. Because again, like she could have done it out of jealousy, or it could have just been like, look, I'll just say whatever you want me to say, just kill me faster type deal. Because that's another thing that happens with these torture sessions, these extreme questionings, as they call them. So I don't have a like real headcanon as to what it is. I think it could go either way, but what I will stick with though is that I do firmly believe that Maegor himself, that his birth was not natural. Visenya did something to procreate that kid.
Yeah. Even if it's something sad, like imagine like Visenya, like if you want to go in a way that like Visenya is the hero, she can do no wrong. Imagine her like giving birth to a baby and the baby's crying and their heart stops. Somebody in the comments just mentioned like, what if Maegor is a fire white? Imagine a little baby is born and it's your heart and soul you've poured into it, and his heart stops and you start like crying, like, come on, wake up. That heart-wrenching scene, and maybe her tears fall on it, and like the mother's love gets Maegor's heart beating again. And he's born that way, like as a fire white. Like John. Like I can see that happening. I don't know. I'm just getting all these images in my head as we talk about this stuff. So y'all are getting hit with all my imaginations. Some stuff won't stick.
No, like we need to craft that Reynolds wrap quality tinfoil to fill in the blanks. That is how we're paving our roads with tinfoil here.
Yeah.
Like that. And that's going to come even more when we move on to our next character, because we really don't have too much to go on. It's all speculation, and that is the Night's Queen. So I want to kick it off to you. Like what I already had brought up my idea, which is the idea of Night's Queen as this sort of progenitor of the Whitewalkers. But I want to get your what do you think on Night's Queen? What's your theories?
Well, just gotta say it over and over again that George is a feminist, and the thing about women is that through all of history, real history written down, and also stories, we're always sidelined as if it's like we're not important. But we're really the most important thing for creating life, right? What is the point of being an other if you cannot create others like you? So you're just going to be the only other walking around Earth, and then you die, and that's it. No. You need an Eve. You need a helper. You need a helpmate to walk the earth with you, to birth your kids so that there can be a point to you being alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see the Night's Queen, as like not inherently evil until George tells us, but just someone doing the biological thing, creating life. Every organism, like, you know, like even organisms that can't reproduce, they find a way. Parasites, right? They'll latch on to another thing so that they can incubate their womb or whatever, right? They'll find whatever way. We don't say that they're evil. We say that they're just finding a way to keep going on with life. So that's how I see the Night's Queen. It's like, is she doing anything that's that horrible? That's like, oh wow, she's crazy. Look at her trying to have kids and stuff, trying to have a family unit. Like, no, she's doing what you were trying to do, what we're all trying to do. But we're just on the other side. So, mother of monsters. So I think that would subvert expectations to know that the first other was a woman. That it's not the Night's King pulling the strings. What if it's a Night's Queen?
Yeah, and that's the way I sort of looked at it too. It's like this: the first other is a woman, and it could be a parallel to what George is presenting with Melisandre. This idea of a fire priestess who births shadows, but the same is said for the White Walkers. The White Walkers are referred to as shadows, and this is the Song of Ice and Fire. So if we're going to have a fire priestess as this like sort of prophet of R'hllor, well, R'hllor being a dualistic religion, then that would mean that the Great Other, who's supposed to be like an equal opposing force to R'hllor, would probably have his own prophet, his own spokesperson on Earth, which would be a sort of ice priestess. And that's kind of how I see what Night's Queen is, like an agent of the Great Other, sort of in the way that like that the Ironborn are almost like agents of the Drowned God. Like these are your representatives in the physical realm. And now it's on you to spread the word, spread the gospel, and make babies.
So well, yeah, you brought up the Ironborn. I mean, we do not sow, we reap. But it's not like we do not sow. The truth is they cannot sow. They cannot grow crops on those rocks. They cannot do anything that the mainlanders are doing. So they have to go and take it. And it's the same thing with the others. They can't reproduce, or they can't do things that we do. They have to go and take it. They have to go and take the sacrifice kids through Snowgate maybe, or they have to upset the seasons or whatever. But we'll see. I'm not sold that she's the mother of monsters. Right now I'm seeing her as just a mother. Okay. She's a single mom. Her husband died in war. But in the chat, some people are saying that like, oh, well, wouldn't the others predate the Night's Queen? We don't know how old the Night's Queen is at all. Just all we're told is that the 13th Lord Commander saw a woman and loved her. She could have been as old, like she could have been like Melisandre, just walking the earth for thousands and thousands of years until he saw her. So yeah, she could be the first one, Lilith, just walking around lonely, like, where's my equal? She could have been made like, if you guys are watching the Lord of the Rings prequel right now, what's that elf that's the father of the orcs?
Oh fuck, what's his name?
The guy Benjen, the actor that played Uncle Benjen on Game of Thrones. He's supposed to be, so he's an elf.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm just blanking on his name.
Yeah, it doesn't matter his name, but it's you as long as you know who I'm talking about. Like, he's just an elf, but he was made somehow where his genetics can make orcs. So what if the first Night's Queen was just a child of the forest, but for whatever reason, her limbs were made longer. She was taller than them, just a genetic mutation, and white. And so they fucking cast her out. And so she birthed her own race of others. That
Adar. Terra Incognita says Adar. Thank you.
Adar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew because I was like, In Deep Geek just did a video on this not too long ago about this character. What the hell's their damn name? Like, yeah, for me, I'm thinking, have you ever seen the movie Species?
No, probably. If it's a horror movie, I've seen like every horror movie, but I know their prop points, but I don't know their names.
It's more of a sci-fi movie, but the idea is that there's this female alien who needs to procreate, and she's looking for a viable man to do that, and she wants someone who's like good stock, disease free type thing. But the goal is to get pregnant, and it's like it's like a xenomorph type thing, just in human form. If you know the xenomorphs from Aliens, and like just the way these alien creatures sort of procreate, but done more in less of a parasitic way, the way xenomorphs are, but trying to do it in the natural way, disguised as a human. And that's sort of what I kind of see with Night's Queen. And that brings up Night's King. Like Night's King, there might have been something about Night's King that just made him a good candidate to be the father of whatever children she was producing. And then this is what leads us then to this idea of Starks having the blood of the other, of descendants
they
of
can withstand cold. Why is Catelyn telling us in the first book over and over again, I get cold, but Ned doesn't?
And
how many times did she say that?
And like it said that the Whitewalkers hate iron, and the Kings of Winter, they wore an iron crown. And this is, again, like this is another idea that I brought up with Dave in my first live stream, was maybe the Iron Crown was sort of like tempering the blood of the other, keeping it in check. Like just in the, and it's sort of something that maybe the Targaryens didn't have. Maybe the Targaryens needed something to sort of keep the blood of the dragon in line, and they didn't have it. And that's how you end up with Maegor and your Maegors and your Daemons and your something. Nothing's keeping that fiery temper in line the way something can maybe be keeping that icy temper of the Starks in line.
No balance.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see. I am super, super, super interested in the Night's Queen. Especially because out of everyone we've spoken about today, she might not be using her womb to be the mother of monsters.
Mm-mm.
Because I don't think the others are able. Damn, I mean, I don't know. I see the others as children of the forest, like elves, like the Shee'e. And it seems, how do the children of the forest reproduce?
Well,
I think it has to be sexually if they're able to procreate with humans.
Well, there is the idea that like House Reed and the Crannog men are sort of these human children of the forest hybrids, that the first men intermingled with the children of the forest, and that they were able to produce viable offspring, and then over generations, that's how you get the Crannog men, and that's why they're so much smaller and why they have like that magic thing. And I always liked that idea. Same thing too with the idea that humans could breed with giants, and that's how you get like Tormund Giantsbane or the Men of Ib and all that sort of.
You can't breed with the Men of Ib.
No, but the idea is that the Men of Ib might be descendant of giants, and that.
Oh, okay, and that's why you can't breed with them. And
that's why, like, because the thing that about the show and the book is that the show presented the White Walkers as like zombies, ice zombies, but that's not the way they are in the book. And George has said, like, no, they're not dead. They're like an alternate form of life.
They're the opposite of dragon. If a dragon is fire made flesh, what is ice made flesh? It's like, gonna be beautiful.
I talked about this. I was on History of Westeros, and for the strip stream they did on Ib, and we talked about this idea of diverging evolutionary paths. Like, what if Neanderthals didn't die out and continued on next to Homo sapiens? And that's sort of the idea with the Men of Ib. And the White Walkers could be just an extension of that, just a different path that human life could have gone on. And they just can't, and maybe some can breed with humans and you can get viable offspring and some can't. And that's the thing too, with the Men of Ib, there is, it's not that all of them will die. It's not that like there can be Ibonese fathers with regular women, but the children come out sterile. There was a character that Davos sails with. The one that gets him to the Three Sisters is part Ibonese. But
I did some research on like all the different races there, but there is a race that's specifically
I think it's the brindled men can't.
the brindled. Okay.
The brindled men of Sithorios can't.
What about
breed.
the green skin people who are bald with the spikes for teeth?
The people of the Thousand Islands. We don't know. Because nobody goes there, and they're a very xenophobic people. Nobody's banging
fingers. Yeah, I'm like, I don't think we can create. We can reproduce with that.
There is House Burrell and the Three Sisters have the mark, which is the webbed fingers.
Yeah,
but that's more of an example of the Lovecraftian influence that George has taken, and that's like the whole. It's another big thing on my channel. I did a Shadow over Innsmouth, and I talked about all House Burrell and the Sister Men and the Mark and Thousand Islanders. So if anyone's interested in more Lovecraft stuff and the fucking fish people, go check out the Innsmouth stuff. But yeah, it's like, so the White Walkers are not dead. That's the whole point. Like, they could just be a different. They are alive. Just it's a different form of life.
Yeah.
George has joked that, like, I could end the story by just having a spaceship land and kill everyone. And he's joking when he says that. But if we think of like extraterrestrial life, like life on other planets, so many of the arguments against it is that, well, you can't have lack of oxygen, other stuff. And that's only when you think of life in human terms, like carbon based. But then there's also like, what if it's silicon based? What if it's that? Like, and that's how I kind of see the others. It's just like, it's an alternate form of life. It doesn't adhere to human standards, but that doesn't make it impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just pointing out, I believe in aliens.
So does that make Lyanna kind of like a mother of monsters? Lyanna Stark, if like as being like mother of Jon. Like, Jon is dead right now. Whatever he wakes up as, he's going to be a monster, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, in a way, yeah, and that leads us to, I'm really loving how easy you're making my transitions here. And that leads us to our final topic, which is the monsters as deemed by society. And Jon falls into that as a warg. Jon doesn't know he's a warg because his wolf dreams are only happening when he's asleep. But he definitely is entering Ghost and seeing through Ghost's eyes. The way that Bran's conscious of it. Bran's well aware that he's a warg. Jon's an unknowing warg. And Arya seems to be aware of it, but doesn't have the teacher to really tell her what it is she's doing when she's like seeing through the cat's eyes and while she's in the house of the undying.
Well, Arya's a monster. She's a killer. you lose.
I think we lost Nettles.
Created a whole out of it.
Oh, there. You're you.
Was I gone?
Yeah, you were gone for a second there.
Oh, I'm back though, right?
Yeah, if you just want to repeat the last sentence you said.
No, I was going off and just saying that Arya is a monster because she's killed. Like, the only thing she hasn't done is created a Horcrux. But every time you kill, you do lose a piece of your soul. Come on. I don't think any of us can deny that. But starting back with Jon, what you were saying, I wanted to tie back what you were saying in the beginning about being a bastard, because I'm a bastard too. And I've never felt any different from being a bastard. Like, when I was in elementary school, kids were still copying off of me. I was still getting picked for the kickball team. Like, to be first to play kickball is what I'm trying to say. Like, my quality of life, I'm not any lesser or better than anyone for being born out of wedlock. Mm-hmm. But Jon was like us. We're like, Jon can read and write. Jon has emotions and sympathies and all that stuff. But the entire world made Jon a monster from being a bastard. Bastards are untrustworthy. Look at how long before Jon got his wolf, before he was a warg, he was already a monster. That's what I'm trying to say. Because Catelyn Stark, when you were talking about nature versus nurture, Catelyn Stark nurtured him into a monster by saying, look at you. You can't sit at the table. Don't talk to my kids. You're like, do you know how that would make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like you can't sit with your brothers and sisters. You look just like Ned Stark, but you can't proudly say that's my dad. You know, like, so Jon Snow is the epitome of a monster.
Mm-hmm. And I said that's why I relate to Jon, because I did have that imposed on me that bastard was somehow tainted, and it was done by the Catholic Church in my tiny little town that I was born.
Untrustworthy. Like, how is the order? Yeah. How did that make you untrustworthy? Like,
I don't know. I said, Christian hypocrisy had been imposed on me since birth, and it's why I had such a backlash to it growing up, and had that eye opener moment when I was 11 years old. And another one, like, I got a good example of that. Okay, so my best friend who I met in college, he was also Catholic, and he went to private Catholic school, and he grew up rich. Like, his mom had horses. They had 20 horses. They didn't breed them. They didn't race them. She wanted a hobby, so she got horses. Now, imagine the amount of money it takes. Imagine the amount of money it takes to take care of 20 horses, and you're not even doing anything with them to generate profit.
Yeah.
So I go to this kid's house, and I meet his mom for the first time, and she's talking to me, and she's like, "Oh, we both we met at college, we're both going to the same college, but he went to private school in high school, and I went to public high school." And she asked me, like, "How are you doing?" And I told her, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I made Dean's List." And then she looks at him, she's like, "Wow." And then she looks at her son, who's my best friend, and she goes, "Why is he doing better than you? Not why are you not you doing as good as him? Why is he doing better than you? Like, somehow, because I was public school, that I am supposed to be lesser than him." And I looked at him, and I said, "Dude, she just fucking insulted both of us."
But she wasn't wrong, Tim. She wasn't wrong. When you're paying that money for that private school education, you better have something to show for it. If I'm, that's how some parents feel. If I'm giving you 3 square meals, you never had to work a day in your life. Why aren't you perfect? It's like, the rest of life is still happening. I get that you bought me like a car, but the rest of life is still happening. But no, yeah. So society is also the mother of monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the example right there. And when we think, like, okay, in the story, wargs, Georgia said that all of the Stark children are wargs. Now, we didn't get to see it with some, obviously. Robb, we never saw any of that with Robb. That's led to the idea that maybe when Robb Stark was killed, that he might have had a brief second life in Grey Wind, because Robb dies before Grey Wind is killed after Robb. So maybe if Robb was able to soul hop and do the second life thing into Grey Wind, it only lasted for a few moments before Grey Wind was off too. And then Sansa's never done warg thing, and her direwolf lady died too early because of Cersei. But all the little bird imagery has led to the idea that Sansa might skin change birds in the Vale. And we see that more, like, not just with the little birds, but also her whole tourney for Sweet Robin and these whole Knights of the Falcon type thing that she's trying to create for him.
Yeah.
But wargs are viewed as monsters, like
in the south of the wall.
South of the wall. And sometimes north of the wall, wargs are a bit more accepted, but they are still judged.
I feel like a warg is like a priest or like a deacon, bishop. If the old gods was an established religion, that they would have, they'd kind of be higher ups, or they would at least be in the position to prove that I speak for the gods. Don't you see I'm a warg?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they might have some respect north of the wall, but south of the wall, don't even talk about it. But they're gonna put you in a straitjacket.
They are still scrutinized to agree, but we also see that from Varamir, and Varamir is when Varamir's sent away, but at the same time it's like, yeah, Varamir, you weren't sent away because you were a warg, though. You were sent away because you killed your baby brother after warging the dog. Like, it's No, the fact that you warged the dog is not what fucked things up for you. It's the fact that you killed your baby brother while doing it. That's what
Verimir, like Verimir is so what was me. It's like Verimir, you could have warged the dog, went in the forest and hunted supper for the family. And they would have been like, yay, my son the warg, he's fed us. But you warged the dog and killed your brother. That's the difference.
That's the difference.
We don't hate you.
Again, it's like it's what I said. Like we don't hate you because of this thing about you. We hate you because you're an asshole. But when we think like, and I guess this will bring us to our last character for the night, which is Gilly and Craster's sons, because we were talking like how do White Walkers procreate if we no longer have this Night's Queen figure? There is something about Craster's children, Craster's sons, that makes them important to them. He marries his daughters, but sacrifices his sons to the White Walkers. And it's said, like, by the Night's, it's noticed when the Night's Watch are staying, like, nothing troubles Craster. Like, even it's snowy at his place, but he's not getting the brutal blizzards. He's able to grow crops, sustain himself and his daughter wives. Something is blessing Craster despite living in these terrible conditions, at least enough to keep him alive. Even if it's the bare minimum that the White Walkers are providing him, and just by leaving him alone, it's still something that he's benefiting from. And it's something that makes these children, these sons of his, so important to the White Walkers. And it's why it's such a detriment when Gilly is smuggled out and baby monster is taken and saved by Sam.
The prince that was promised. I don't know. I think the first question or the first thing to look at is that, is Craster just choosing himself to sacrifice only sons, or has an entity told him that we only want sons? Like, did he leave a daughter and the next day the daughter was still there? And then the next time he left the son and he noticed that the son was taken, and that taught him like only sacrifice sons? Or is it just like, I want the daughters for myself type of thing?
I think it's a conscious decision on his part that he wants to keep his daughters for himself and get rid of the sons. Because the sons, it's not just him being a sick fuck who wants his daughters, but also to leave sons also creates competition.
Right. Just like in the animal kingdom, how lions and stuff will do, they'll immediately kill the little baby boys. Okay. Because I was going to go on tinfoil about, specifically that the walkers only need boys. Why would you only need boys? It must mean that you have an abundance of women. But even with going with that, the thing is, like, with Craster, is people kind of don't know the real meaning of sacrifice. People think that, like, oh, if I have like an extra water bottle and I give you one, I'm sacrificing. No, sacrifice is like it doesn't count for. It has to be something that you want, and it has to be done willfully. Like, Craster kind of has to like leave these children with joy. Like, and the reason I say that is, like, if the White Walkers could just go in your home and take your kids, they would. But that doesn't work. That would be the easiest thing for them to do, is to go in your home and steal your kids. They don't do that. They have to wait for you to willfully say, I'm doing this out of my free will. That's what sacrifice is to do it with an open heart. That's what Azor Ahai, Nisa. Like, Azor Ahai cannot sneak up on Nisa and stab her. Nisa has to say, like, I'm choosing to let you stab me. I'm choosing to sacrifice myself for the world. Or like Daenerys, I'm choosing to walk into this fire knowing that I could burn and die as well. But I'm going to take that leap. I'm going to sacrifice myself for the greater good, for the rest of the world. So what I see Craster doing is, number one, this is the example of the proper sacrifice. This is how it's supposed to be done for it to work for whatever it is that the White Walkers are doing. So I do kind of see it as like more like a religious thing. And so then, he kind of has like a harem of mothers of monsters.
And when you say like a sacrifice needs to be important to you, it's why I think like I enjoy Euron, and I think Euron's definitely going to fuck some shit up, but I think ultimately his plans are going to fail because he doesn't care about the things that he's sacrificing. He doesn't care about his brothers. He doesn't care about his unborn child. This blood maelstrom that he's going to about to do in the sack of Old Town, like it doesn't matter. It ultimately doesn't matter to him. It's going to be powerful because it involves king's blood and a priest's blood. Like Aaron, the damp hair, is actually a twofer. He's both as a priest of the drowned god, he has holy blood, and as brother of Euron, he has king's blood. But even though that's powerful blood in and of itself, Euron doesn't care about him, and I think that's going to be like the missing ingredient in Euron's plans.
Yeah. Some people in the chat, they're saying that like the sacrifice isn't Craster's. He's forcing his wife to sacrifice him. It's not a sacrifice if it doesn't mean anything to you. So, okay, I think there's two different types of sacrifice. Like, I think for it to work, it has to be willing. That's why I said before that like it won't work. Whatever magic the walkers are trying to do, it won't work for them to just go and get the kids, right? Because then they would just do that. So for it to be sacrificed, they have to be willing. But now, if you're doing blood magic, which is what Euron is doing, which is what we're talking about Daenerys did to birth the dragons, that is like you're trying to do the hammer of the waters. You're trying to do big things. Euron's trying to raise krakens. So that sacrifice is the one that needs to hurt you. And that's why Craster's not doing no magic. Is Craster getting us a magic sword or a unicorn or anything? No. He's not doing the magic. All he's doing is the willing sacrifice thing. Like, hey, I'm giving this to you of my own free will. Now you are going to make the sacrifice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And because if we wouldn't have baby monster and the whole plight of Gilly if the daughter wives didn't feel a sense of attachment to these children. It's one thing for Craster to sacrifice the sons because he doesn't give a shit about the sons. He doesn't want them to begin with. But it is the mothers that are parting with it, and Gilly wants to keep her baby. She wants her baby to survive, and that's
9 months. Let me stick something in your belly, Tim, for 9 months, and you're hearing its heartbeat and feeling its move. And even if you don't even care about that stuff, it's like if you do anything for 9 months, if you work at a job for 9 months, you're gonna want something in return for your time. Like you're gonna want a child. Like, come on. Like, so there's some attachment there, even if you know you shouldn't.
And even with the circumstances of monster birth, because it is a terrible situation that Gilly is in. The father of your own child is your own father. And that is why monster is referred to as the abomination by the Night's Watch. Stannis refers to him. Like, he has that moment when he hears about it, and he's like, we're not in... He makes it's actually a little bit of showing Stannis's sort of dry humor when he's like, well, what the fuck is that? You know, we aren't in... Where are we? King's Landing? Stannis, for his part, actually has some pretty good humor. You just got to look for it.
I would go to his stand-up. He has enough one-liners to string together an HBO special. I'm telling you the truth.
But still, like, this is the example of, just like with the wargs, like, Monster isn't even a warg. Monster's just a normal baby. He's an incest baby. That's his only problem. But he is a normal baby. And it's like Tyrion, too. Like, I always think of Oberyn Martell and his line to Tyrion when he first met him. He's like, you weren't a monster. You didn't have no wings. You didn't have no tail. You're
a baby.
Yeah, your head was a little big. Your limbs were a little small, but you were just a baby. And that's what monster is. And also, too, like, his name is Monster. I mean, that comes from the wildlings' belief that you don't give a proper name until they're at least 2 because of the high infant mortality rates. So Monster is sort of a placeholder name, but still, like, seriously, your name is Monster? Like, really? That we couldn't come up with anything better?
What else are you gonna name him? Blanket?
Well, Val sort of does the little cutesy thing of like My Little Monster type deal. And I mean, that's what I refer to my puppy as all the damn time. So, but
also think about the harshness of the times. A monster is probably better able to survive than my little rabbit. or like my little sunshine, my little rosy. Like no, the
Or
rose and the sunflower is not lasting in the winter, but the monster will last through winter.
or like Varamir and his brother, they were lump and bump.
Hey, a lump and a bump can survive. But yeah. I kind of wanted to go back a little bit more about Catelyn because we kind of glossed over it.
Okay, sure. Let's. We're going at 2.5 hours, so let's have Catelyn be our last, and then we'll end it tonight.
Well, just going off of like what I was saying earlier about how like a good mom can produce a monster just as well as a bad mom, and Catelyn Stark is a different mother to each one of these kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like starting with Jon, she is the mother of monster because she's the first one to make sure that Jon never forgets that he's a bastard. So she's being the bad mom. This is the woman who's putting the cigarette out on your arm. Like, you're coming to see Brad. I wish it was you that died. Damn.
Yeah.
That's a hate crime against
Should have been you.
Okay, so that's Jon. So then we go to Robb. And this is kind of like the nice mom that I was talking about, where she just gives him comfort and raises him up to where he has the confidence to become a monster king, kind of. And not like a bad king, but just like he's the kind of king that he is winning every war, right? He has so much like love and what's that word? Well, he's so well adjusted because of his mother's love that it gives him the confidence to get himself killed, if that makes sense. That's what I mean by like being a king makes him a monster kind of thing. He is killing innocents. He is in war. He is thrusting his swords into the hearts of men. That's a monster. Next we have Sansa. Mm-hmm. Catelyn makes her like a courtesy monster. Like, my mom told me that I have to say please and thank you, so I'm going to say please and thank you, even if you're raping me, even if you're bashing my head in, even, like, you know what I mean? And in a way, Sansa's a monster that just can't let go. Have you ever met a woman? Because, you know, women, we can be the worst kind of monsters, but that was all. Oh, like in Harry Potter, Dolores Umbridge.
Oh, yeah.
Full of courtesies. You could see Sansa being like, you got to say please and thank you, but she's still a monster because of like the courtesies and the weight of it. Now kind of like Sansa has the power to become Alicent. When you are chained by the weight of these rules, it makes you resent it. It makes you resent the people following the rules. It makes you resent the people rebelling against the rules. You resent yourself because you hate yourself every time you have to do the thing, you know? So like that's the kind of monster that Sansa is, the Alicent, because of Catelyn, the way Catelyn raised her.
Yeah,
Do
like
you want to cut in?
Sansa and Arya is kind of like a mini version of Alicent and Rhaenyra. When Sansa looks at Arya and it's like, how can you buck the rules and get a oops, I hit the tail. How can you buck the rules and get away with it? So it's like that, but just on a smaller scale, because it hasn't risen to the levels that Alicent and Rhaenyra have. Like, we're not fighting over it.
If you let Sansa grow up to be Alicent's age, she will, and stay in King's Landing, she will 100% turn into Alicent, because that's nurture. Mm-hmm. King's Landing turns you into Alicent type of thing. But yeah, like Catelyn, it was not the same mother that she was to Arya as she was to Sansa. And that's why Arya was also, I think Arya might have felt like she was neglected, right? Because my mom's always praising Sansa and she's always brushing her hair. But I don't think Arya was actually neglected. I think Arya, in the same way that Robb, that she was actually nurtured and let be herself more. Because Kat certainly could have been harsher with Arya. She could have locked her up in a tower, you know, and been like, you're wearing your corset, put the book over your head, you're going to practice until you become a lady. She could have been like that, and she wasn't. She kind of turned a blind eye when she saw that Arya was muddy a few times, you know, type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, Arya's also kind of seems like she's kind of more of a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
She's closer with Ned. And because also, especially when Ned tells her, like, you're a lot like Lyanna, and Arya's like, but Lyanna was beautiful. But still, it's like, she takes it as the compliment that it is. It's like, you have the spirit of this woman that I so loved and adored. And it really is like the heartfelt moments between Ned and Arya, that he sees his sister in her, and it's like Arya is carrying on that spirit, that willful spirit, that like the idea like Sansa's being raised to be a proper Southern lady, but Arya is the one with the spirit of a Northern woman. And also because Arya is so close to Jon, and how you had said, like, Jon is the one who is reminded by Catelyn all the time that he is a bastard, yet his closest female contact is Arya. Like, Arya makes like the conscious decision to be around, to have more of a sibling relationship with Jon than any of her other brothers.
He sees that he needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Rob's gonna be fine. He has Theon. Bran's fine. Everyone's fine. Jon's not fine.
Bran's gonna be fine because he's mom's favorite, even though he doesn't give her a passing fucking thought.
Yeah. And Catelyn, and that's the thing, the one that she loves the most becomes king.
Mm-hmm.
Bran. And then you have Rickon, who she creates a monster from neglect.
Yeah.
If Rickon is unhinged, it's from neglect.
Yeah. Rickon, because right now when all the shit goes down at the beginning, Rickon's 3. As far as in-universe time has gone, he's now about 6. So, and the last 3 years he has spent on Skagos. So he has spent more time away from his family than he has ever had with them. At least more time conscious, because nobody remembers anything from when they were a baby. So Rickon very much is the feral child. And that's what's going to make his story so interesting, is like when you bring a feral child back, but this is who like the Manderleys are placing their bets on to be their lord. And it's like, nah, this kid's probably too far gone. He's more wolf than man by this point.
Yeah. And also like Catelyn's choice. Like, imagine if Catelyn loved Rickon like how she loved Bran or Sansa. And she's like away, and she's like, oh, she feels an ache at her breast. Like, I just wish, because Rickon is 3. You should still feel that ache at your breast as a woman when you think about your youngest son, the baby. What if her motherly love for Rickon was so strong, she took her ass back to Winterfell?
Yeah.
And the story doesn't play out. That's all that needs to happen. The only thing that needs to happen is that Catelyn needs to feel a fierce love for Rickon and go running back to him, like Cersei would do, and like so many other mothers would do. The mothers who give up their careers as lawyers to stay at home. Like that type of, not everyone's that type of mom. Not everybody has to do it. Sometimes your kids don't want your stupid ass at home. Take your ass to work. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there is a type of mother who feels the call of their kid and puts their kid's needs above their own. Catelyn is not that type of mother. For Catelyn, being back down south and being the party girl that she was, because Catelyn spent also a book telling us how much she hates the North, how much she's still a stranger. So the first opportunity she had to go and play the game of politics, she did. She made that choice over Rickon.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by neglect. It's not like, oh, she had something to do. It's like she made a conscious choice.
Yeah, I'm willing to make certain concessions to Cat. Like, okay, you have 5 kids. That's a lot of attention to spread around. I can see how sometimes you might need a break. And when Bran has his fall and he's in the coma, yeah, okay, we can see why exactly you feel like you can't leave his bedside and all of that. And it takes Rob to remind her. It's like, well, Rickon when she's like, well, Bran needs me, and Rob has to be like, well, Rickon needs you too. We all need you. And we can, as humans, we can kind of be like, okay, we'll cut you some slack on that one, Kat. Your kid is in a coma. I can understand that one. But then you said but she still makes the conscious effort, the conscious decision to leave. And it's like, no, that had nothing to do with it has. Okay, so yeah,
leaves. Like when she went to King's Landing, she had to tell her husband important news. Okay, then take your ass back to Winterfell. Like she had a million. This bitch is at the Vale. This bitch is in Renly's camp. This bitch is going all around Westeros.
Yeah, it's like okay, yeah.
But going home.
Like, it's too important. This is too important to entrust to a raven. I have to tell him in person. Okay, tell him in person, then go the fuck home. Do what you need to do, then go back home. You didn't go back home.
She picked her dying dad. At the end, she's like, well, my dad's dying, and like me staying here is not going to change that. And I've already said goodbye to him. But I'm going to stay here because my dad's dying. It's like, your dead 80-year-old dad needs you more than the 3-year-old. That's what I'm saying. But I hate to, I don't mean to change. I don't want to turn this into a hate cat thing. But I'm just saying, we are all living. One of the major themes that George hammers home is the sins of the father. We do not exist in the vacuum. I know you want to beat your chest and think that like, I got here because of what I did. No, you got here because your parents, first of all, your mom chose not to have an abortion. Number one. So thank you, mom, for pushing me out through, right? But you got here because your parents gave you your genetics. So first of all, you did not make yourself. And then you got here through what school did your parents choose to put you in? What neighborhood did your parents live in? What town? What country? Like all of that. Like we're living on the strings of our parents. Wait, what was my point? Oh, Catelyn. So Catelyn's decisions, like choosing to go to King's Landing and then to Renly and then to all these places, her choices are affecting Rickon. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about mothers of monsters. It's these mothers making choices that either create or pacify monsters.
And that's, we got to wait and see when Winds of Winter comes out. Like when we see Rickon again, I wouldn't be surprised if he has more attachment to Osha and and whatever Skagosi caretakers have been watching him for the last 3 years. Those are going to be the one, because they're going to be the ones that are fresh in his mind, not his mother and not his father. Most of his life that he can consciously remember is going to have been spent on Skagos at this point.
He's approaching that age I told you, that 3rd grade age. And when you're in 3rd grade, that's when your brain makes these clicks and connections about the world. Who is your most prominent figure? But I don't think Rickon's mom is Osha. I think Rickon's mom is Shaggy Dog. Because raised by wolves. Like at night, where is he going? Shaggy Dog. What feelings is he feeling? Shaggy Dog is lonely too. If Ghost is saying, where are my brothers and sisters? I used to have, one or two. If Greywind is thinking about the past, Shaggy Dog's the most. At least Greywind and Ghost hang out. They go drinking on Thursday nights. At least they hang out. Shaggy Dog don't have nobody, and he probably feels far. So yeah, I think Rickon is going to become, hopefully. If Shaggy Dog is his mom, then that means maybe Blood Raven and the Three-Eyed that those are his teachers. Then maybe closer to like old gods kind of thing.
Yeah, because I do believe that when Blood Raven was reaching out looking for, I do think he was looking for Rickon, not Bran. And then when Bran shows up, Blood Raven's like, well, I got to work with what I got.
Yeah.
And that's sort of on Jojen's part, for Jojen misinterpreting the vision of the wicked chained wolf for Bran and not recognizing it as Rickon.
We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see. Bran will do, though. Bran can string complete sentences. Rickon, not so much. I'll take Bran over Rickon just on that technicality.
Yeah, it's very much like, I wanted an Xbox, I got a PlayStation. We're gonna make do. They're both good.
Hey, we're still gonna play games.
All right, I think that's a good place to end it tonight. Then, thank you, Girl Nettles, for
this has been so fun. Thank you, chat.
Yep. Tell the people tell the chat where they can find you.
Oh yeah, I'm Girl Nettles. I have my own YouTube channel. I do like drunk history. Everything A Song of Ice and Fire. And then I also do like debates. I need to get you on a debate, Tim, probably in the next year, next coming year. But yeah, I do debates like, Rhaenyra versus Alicent. And we go like head to head, like presidential debate style, where your arguments decide who wins. So come and join me for that. And then I am going to be just dropping like videos like everyone else does too. Yeah. But I'm just getting started. So come with low expectations to my channel, but support.
Yes. And I am Gray Waste Tim. Again, you can find me on, well, you're already on my channel, but you can find me on Twitter at the Gray Waste. Links to Nettles channel are also in the video description.
Thank you.
I'll be chugging them along. I'm building a new computer for Christmas, so hopefully I'll be doing some actual produced videos. Again, I want to do the Romance of the Three Emperors for the ET stream, and I'm also, again, I'm having, with Obsidian Knights coming back, I have an upcoming appearance on that with Gray Area. So shout outs to her, shout outs to David Lightbringer, shout outs to all the ladies of Direwolf City. Please go check all of them out, and we'll see you next time.
Woo! Bye. Peace out, everybody.